You want me to show you? You don't even know. Okay.
Oh, we've already seen the messages already.
I know. I don't want to call you guys some imaginary names.
Yeah, so this kind of pen needs to be oriented precisely with a flat part out like that, so never like that, never like that.
Okay.
Otherwise, it just won't write well.
Old school. Oh, that's very nice.
See, I did it wrong because I'm not accustomed to holding it in.
Personal injury.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a lot today about kind of the different perspectives of the guy that sells the insurance versus the guy that puts it to use when, when bad things happen.
Yeah.
So I hope you're cool with that. I think that's a great, I just think that opens the door to a lot of good discussions and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm huge on umbrellas, and we've sold them forever, and I've had a lot of claims go up into umbrellas, and it's a game changer if you have a state.
We had a dude, which I'll bring up. Yes, ma'am.
Are you good with the phone number? You know the phone
Yeah.
Great.
Your personal cell number, right?
Yes, exactly.
Good.
Please, I need a date.
We had a guy recently that was having that go on, and I'll get into it in a lot more detail, but he's, for his entire life, had 25-50 minimal limits, no insurance, or no umbrella, no nothing, and was living in $1 million home free and clear. He's like 72 years old and gets in an accident that he caused, and was, they were sending affidavits
and Mark told me that everything went as well as could
and I tried to
possibly
explain
have
what was
been
going on, but
hoped
he
for.
was just dumbfounded that he had no protection.
Even yesterday early morning, he called Mark on the phone.
And so many of these listeners
Yeah, so
to the
he's-
show are old
and then
enough that they're in
John
that
just
kind
said that
of
he's
mode. They've just been buying
texting John like a madman,
forever,
links and
they
interesting
don't ever give
things.
it a moment's thought.
So,
it's cheaper, it's better, and that's
his mind is back
It's how
at work,
close it's
which is
like
awesome. That's
Kick's pretty broad, too.
Yeah,
So is insurance.
but that's an incredible.
Cake means a lot of things, right? A lot of things to different people. Some people don't even like cake.
true.
So,
So I want to talk about that. That'll give us, a little bit of stuff to chime in on. So we'll have fun. It'll be a good show.
And I have a compound question that involves both of you, Joe.
Of course you do. With 3 subparts and
Subparts and 2 conditional asterisks that if A, then go to part 2.
we're going to need to go to break halfway between subquestion A and B, but we'll get them all in there.
The body of that question compound will take up most of the segment.
Right?
Answers right after this.
Stump the chump.
I have sat on some of the general counsel calls for different carriers. Pretty interesting stuff.
Cool.
Personal injury.
That's a great perspective because they don't invite me to those calls.
Oh, no, they don't. Darren Shanker, actually, I grew up with him, so I
Okay.
kind of know him, talked to him before about a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing how much bad faith can
It's
pull
crazy.
something up.
It's crazy. Well, I owe most of my practice to insurance companies not doing the right thing, and they could put us out of business if they did. And so it's cool. It'll be fun.
Ripped off, bad news. You need advice so you don't have to lose. We'll come running just as fast as we can. Troubleshooter's gonna help the common man.
This is the Troubleshooter Show. Now, Tom Martino.
Good morning. This is not Tom Martino, but this is John Fuller filling in for Tom Martino on the Troubleshooter Network. Today is Wednesday, April 30th, and we have an exciting 3 days to look forward to. We are going to cover a lot of ground. Update on Tom, he's doing great. He texted me this morning. He's doing better than even yesterday, and so we're all excited to hear that and look forward to his speedy return. My name is John Fuller. Many of you know me. I'm a personal injury attorney here in the Denver area and have been for, 23, almost 24 years now. And I am a plaintiff's attorney. I only represent people that are victims of car crashes in their claims against the at-fault drivers and their insurance companies. And so we, you guys frequently hear from me, and it's all one-sided and from the perspective of the guy that's going after the insurance companies. We have a really special guest today that's going to add a somewhat different perspective to it. Dan Mahoney is with us. Say hello, Dan.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Dan is with the Insurance Group of Denver. Dan is an independent insurance agency, right?
Correct.
And so, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, what that means is he's not beholden to any particular insurance company, and that affords you the opportunity to really try to come up with products that best suit the customer's needs and kind of act more independently and less, one size fits all that you might get at a branded insurance agency or something along the way.
Absolutely. Branded agencies, the agents there actually work for that carrier. When you call a direct carrier, the person you're talking to on the phone works for that direct carrier. As an insurance broker, we actually work for you. We represent you, and we look through the market to find items for you or products for you that work best.
So we are going to talk about all sorts of stuff today about, the different options you have for insurance, how that insurance comes into play in the event that something bad happens to you, whether you're a victim or even whether you happen to make a mistake and cause an accident. And that unfortunately happens to listeners as well. And I get those calls all the time. And it's sometimes a pretty difficult call because people are shocked to hear what their insurance companies actually will and won't do for them when that event happens. And so we encourage your calls here on the Troubleshooter Network. We solve problems, answer questions, take complaints. We are here to help you and work through all of your issues. We have a couple of deputies in with us today, Deputy Doc, longtime OBGYN doc in Denver, and a valuable member of the team. And we have our ever popular Dimitri, who is just a master of all things and here to chime in as well. So call us up. We're here to help. We look forward to your calls, no matter the issue. If you've been ripped off, taken advantage of, anything along those lines, we are here to help, and we are looking for your calls. So we will get started in that. Let's check in with our deputies here. How's things going there, Dimitri?
Good. John, I'm glad you brought up how things are going, because we do have an interesting case that came up a couple of days ago, and I've been thinking about it, and I'd like to get your input on this.
Okay.
Because even though you're not a contracts attorney per se, I think most of your job is dealing with contracts and contractual relationships.
Yeah, to an extent.
So a few days ago, a lady by the name of Haley called us. She and her roommate rented a downtown apartment at an eye-watering price of $3,000.
Whoa.
Everything went well until she and the roommate had some kind of a falling out. And I guess it was a serious enough falling out that the roommate had either applied for a protection order or got one. It wasn't very clear from the phone call, but that's not the actually important part.
Okay.
The important part is this. This now estranged roommate went to the apartment manager's office and presented them with this problem that she's personally having with Haley. And the apartment manager let her out of her lease.
Oh.
And unfortunately for Haley, that resulted in Haley being stuck with the entire $3,000 a month rent plus utilities, which she can't afford. Now, with a mistake I think that we possibly made during the show a few days ago is we evaluated this matter from the perspective of the lease. What does the lease say? And sure, it says that she's jointly and severally responsible. But I've been thinking, and Brad O'Brien confirmed that, of course, right? That's an easy one. But I've been thinking about this for the past few days, and I think that we should have, and tell me if I'm right or wrong here, or if this is the right approach, I think we should have evaluated this matter from the perspective of simply a contractual relationship, which is this. There are three principles, right? The landlord and each of the two tenants. Now, each of the two tenants entered into a contractual relationship between all three of them with the understanding that each of the two tenants will sign and perform their obligations under their lease.
Right.
And everything went well until tenant one and the landlord got together without tenant two's knowledge or permission and decided that tenant one is no longer obligated to perform her obligations under this lease. That was done, the effect of that was to the financial detriment of tenant number two.
Right.
So, if we look at it from that perspective, is it then fair and equitable to hold tenant two responsible for both of these obligations, even though the only reason she entered into this contractual relationship, not the lease, but the contractual unwritten relationship between the three parties with the understanding that tenant number
Right.
one will be equally responsible.
How in the world did the tenant convince the landlord to let her off the lease? How did that happen?
Well, so what we infer from what Haley said is tenant one went to the landlord and said, hey, this is now becoming a physically dangerous environment. I mean, I infer that because Haley said that there was mention of a protection order. So the landlord, I assume, now there are a lot of assumptions in this.
Right.
I assumed, well, we're going to let her out because she claims to be in danger and she gets murdered. We don't want to be responsible
Right.
for that, right? But I think how she convinced the landlord is, to me, irrelevant. It's the effect.
It's just it's a tough situation. Let's kind of dive into that as soon as we get back from the first
Great.
break. To the callers out there, the number to reach us today is 713-8255, 303-713-8255, help@troubleshooter.com. Give us a call. We're here to help you, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Hey, Dan,
God, I hate restraining
when
orders.
you talk, you really got to get close to the mic.
And we don't know if it was granted or not. It may
Well,
have
that's
been.
what we're going to get into because, I mean, there has to be a credible threat of imminent bodily injury to even get one. And they don't grant them without there being a temporary one that has to be served. And then there's a hearing that determines whether or not it's going to be issued and made permanent, as you know from your neighbor and all that.
Do I ever?
And so, I mean, all of that has to be looked into. If the landlord let her out prematurely, then I think there's a valid claim to be made that they have almost impliedly, acquiesced to her half responsibility of the lease. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
a detriment of
Right.
number two. Now, my position is that the fair and equitable solution is, hey, fine, let her out of the lease, but let the second tenant remain responsible for only half of the financial burden.
That's what I'm saying. That her burden might only be what her
What it would have
proportional,
been.
share would have been. That's just crap. You think they would have tried to move her into a different unit and keep her on the hook for stuff instead of playing that game. I mean, if not, all you'd have to do is go in and file and get a TRO every time you wanted to get out of a lease and come back and waive that in front of the landlord and say, let me out. That just doesn't
even
seem...
with the protective order. I mean, if it doesn't go to court, it's not even necessarily fact, right? So they can't even make that presumption.
They haven't been found. They're not findings of fact by a judge.
Right.
They're just allegations at that point. And the judge has to find that by a preponderance, it appears more likely than not that there's a credible threat. I mean, they have to make a finding that there appears to be that threat. But you can't restrain somebody under a TRO without an opportunity for a hearing, and they have to serve the person. So it's not like you can go get one in secret and then, whoop it out when you need it and say, oh, by the way, cop, arrest this guy. I've got a TRO on him or something. They weren't by some crazy chance intimate with each other, were they?
We don't know.
Because that changes things. Because domestic TROs are different.
Yes.
I mean, there's a heightened standard that kind of goes along with them. And so I didn't know if that would come into play or not. But
My position is, my question is, does the TRO even matter? Because I'm looking at it as a contractual relationship.
I don't
and
think
their
it matters
obligation
from
for
a
fair dealing.
I don't think it matters from a who cares whether she's in the unit or not? It's a matter of what happens under default when the provisions of the contract get exercised and they say you're on the hook for it. I would think and we can talk about this when we come back, but I would think if she breaches a contract and just moves out, and they decide to come after her, I would think she'd be able to name that other tenant as a third party, countersuit and bring her in and make her just as liable.
Absolutely.
I really think so. And they would be hard pressed to say that, no, we're not wanting to go after her. you know, and even if they weren't, you can.
Oh, that's what I would have done.
I
Yeah.
think that's the answer. But, you know, you may have to test it by actually suing her, you know, or, you know, in the event that a collection action happens. I mean, you wouldn't want to prospectively go after her, but, so, I don't know.
Yeah, just keep in mind, I boiled it down to strictly a contractual relationship outside of the leases
Right.
themselves.
Well, it's a modification of the lease. I mean, that alone is an agreement that would have to have its own consideration and stuff, which, you know, I think is a different take, but you don't really have the ability to enforce whether or not their agreement is valid. I just think that the penalty for them breaching the lease by letting her out is that they have to eat the guarantee of at least half the rent. You know,
That's another way to look at it. Yeah, that's different from how I viewed it. I viewed the master contract, which is the unwritten one,
yeah,
between the three parties. As part of that contract, two of the parties signed leases with the landlord party.
right. Well, we have a lease apartment issue number 1 on the board, so we're gonna confuse the
What did
shit out
Brad
of
say?
everything.
Brad, this is our fault. We looked at it as a lease issue, and Brad said, no, she's stuck. And it bothered me, and it took me a few hours to figure out why it bothered me so much. And I said, it's because in my mind, forget the lease.
Yeah.
That's the least important part.
I think
It's
the
contract.
answer is if it ever came that she had to breach that contract, she would have a viable countersuit against her former roommate. Now, the challenge could be, here's something I haven't thought about. Thou shalt not threaten, harass, molest, intimidate, blah, blah, blah. Those are the words of the TRO, okay? Could filing a lawsuit violate that? Maybe. I don't know.
Shit, okay. So we have a ton of outgoing calls, so let's leave that for later if you feel like it. We don't
Hello, John Fuller coming back at you on the Troubleshooter Show here, rapidly filling up the phone lines. We're going to go right to the lines. We will get back to Dimitri's issue. That is an interesting deal that's going to take a little while to discuss, so don't think that we're not dealing with that, but we have a whole list of callers here, and we're going to get started right away. Lissa, you have an issue with your lease or your apartment. What's going on?
So I had signed the lease on Monday. Sorry, I have a daughter, but and after I signed the lease, we went in to move our stuff, and there was a cockroach on the wall. Mind you, these are newly renovated apartments. So I was really shocked when I seen one, and so I had called. The office was closed. The next day I had called and informed them I wanted to break my lease. They said that they would have to get in contact with corporate because I told them I wanted all my money back because, I mean, I have a kid. Like, you know, I can't live with a roach infestation. I talked to the tenants nearby, and not a lot of them spoke English, so it was kind of hard to, like, you know, understand how bad the situation really was. Well, I guess it's so bad that they spray these apartments like twice every 2 weeks.
Oh.
That means that there's like a major roach infestation. Twice every 2 weeks is like really concerning.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Have you seen evidence of this infestation or just one cockroach?
Well, I had seen two. I had seen the first one on the wall and then the second one in the bathroom. And then when we further like looked at the baseboards and stuff, there was a bunch of dead ones. And so I was like, okay. And since they like bomb them frequently, I was like, maybe there's just not that much. I mean, it was the middle of the day. Roaches are like nocturnal, you know, so they should have never even been out anyway. But with speaking with other tenants, they said like it's such a bad issue that there's roaches in their TV and their microwave.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ken, I used to live in New York, like in New York City, and cockroaches are a scourge. So if Lisa saw 2 cockroaches, that means there are 2,000 more that will come out at night. But I think an even bigger issue than the disgusting, revolting cockroaches is the fact that they spray these chemicals.
Right.
And she has a little daughter.
Exactly.
And God forbid she has a cat or a dog or something. All of these creatures are going to get poisoned
Right.
before the cockroaches get poisoned.
Based on your experience, what should she do?
Oh, I would definitely find a different place.
Yeah.
Now, I do recognize that I may be unusually sensitive to cockroaches because of my early experience with them. But this is a serious issue. I heard her daughter in the background. She's a tiny little baby.
Yeah.
So, John, does she have a leg to stand on? Does she have a technically valid reason to be afraid for her health and the health of her, not just being disgusted?
Yeah, I think if the apartment poses a health and safety risk to the daughter, she's got a pretty good grounds to, to attempt to break the lease. Now, listen, everything in real estate, everything, buy-sell contracts, lease contracts, everything else, it's a contract. And your rights are spelled out in the contract. And so what happens when you decide to break that lease is either laid out in the contract or it's not. Now, I think you've got a valid reason to not want to live there. And that reason may be good enough to carry the day. I mean, I think you can say to the landlord and to the management company that, that the next call is to the health department and you've got these valid concerns and stuff, and they may just not want you in their apartment well enough to get you out of there and to let you back out of the lease, especially since you've never really moved into the place. I mean, come on. It's not like there's any real damage. There's no move out cleaning fee or any of that crap. It's just no harm, no foul. Let's move on. But if push comes to shove and they want to enforce it, they're going to claim that you breached the contract and they can take you to court. And a judge can decide whether or not you breached it. But I would warn you that as a person that is renting apartments, you don't want to really have on your record that you've violated a lease and you've breached it or you've not paid your obligations on time, because that's going to cause problems for the next, place that you go to and everything else. But I would start by having a conversation with their corporate office and saying, look, you guys have a major health problem here, and bringing that to their, to their attention. And if you've got a child, particularly one with any health issues, I just don't see them really pushing to enforce that too much. Do you?
Well, John, I think you're absolutely right, but I think that a lot of these problems are resolved before they even get to court or a default situation. So what do you think of this, Elisa and John? Why don't you follow up this conversation with your property manager, who hasn't gotten back to you with the answer yet, with this? You discussed this with the Tom Martino troubleshooter on the radio without mentioning the apartment complex's name or the name of the property management company. But we, myself especially, are extremely interested in seeing how this issue gets resolved. And we asked you to call and email us with what the property manager offers as a resolution to your problem. And then we can update this story on the air. With or without their name being mentioned on the air, it's going to be up to them. And you can feel free to give them my personal cell phone number, Lisa, which Kelly here, when we're done with your phone call on the air, Kelly will give you my personal cell phone number. And please let me know what the apartment manager said about you being able to get out of this lease without incurring any financial burden.
I mean, there's a reason, Lisa, why we didn't ask what the apartment complex is at this stage, because, that's kind of the nuclear button when you go and put it out on the radio that you've got this massive roach infestation and everything else. So we're trying to give you as many tools in your tool bag to use. And what Dimitri is suggesting is that you let them know that this could go another way without threatening. Don't be rude, be nice.
Yeah, just tell them we're extremely interested in providing an on-the-air update to this issue.
Very interested,
Chomping at the bit.
Like really, really interested.
Looking forward to it.
So, does that make sense to you, Lisa?
Yeah. They said that they would give me a call back today, early morning, mid-afternoon, to let me know what corporate had said. I'm assuming they're kind of realizing that if I decide to take them to court, they probably wouldn't win. I think the reason why so many of the people that live there, happen to live there because they can't afford anything else, and they don't understand that this is like borderline illegal, if not illegal, because you're spraying it so many times.
So are you in the unit right now?
No, we completely, after I seen that roach, we left. I was like, I'm not even going to try to do this. I don't even want to do this. So we just went and stayed with my daughter's grandparents for a little bit until
Gotcha.
we find something different.
Yeah, I think that's important too, to not actually take possession of the property. But I was going to say, if you did take possession, you need to be taking lots of photographs of these roaches. But it's better that you didn't move in at all. So keep us in the loop, would you please? And
Yeah, of
we'll look
course.
forward to hearing back and trying to get you some help on this. Okay. Thanks, Lissa, for the call. We're gonna move along here. We've got Eric on the line. Eric is looking for help with a timeshare. What's going on, Eric?
Well, basically, I'm calling on behalf of my daughter. She got roped into the Vegas Hilton timeshare deal, and as far as I can tell, she didn't really understand what was going on, and she felt like she was pressured and manipulated, and she thought what she was actually getting was a credit card and either a free or discounted vacation.
How old is your daughter, Eric?
Well, she was 21 at the time. She just turned 21 that weekend, and we took her to Vegas, to celebrate her birthday. And
Okay, so
she walked into one of the casinos, and they had a kiosk there with a couple people, and they kind of, coerced her and her.
So she thought she signed up for a credit card and she walked out with a timeshare?
Yeah, and a $3,000 bill.
All right.
On that said credit card.
Do you have a copy of everything she signed?
Yes, I do.
Can you email it to us, please?
Yeah. Eric, I'm going to put you back on hold. Kelly's going to give you the email address. I'd love to see all that paperwork. If you could get that to us, that would be great. We're going to go to a quick break, but do get that stuff to us, and then we'll have a lot better chance of trying to figure out how to navigate through this deal. Okay, Eric? Thanks.
We have a law firm in New Jersey.
I thought we did.
What?
I thought we did.
Yeah. So Kelly can give her that information. That's the best thing you can do right now.
Okay. Will they come on the air and talk about it?
They might, but they'll just say, we need the details of the case.
Right.
That we know that they're will legitimately attempt to get her out of the timeshare, unlike some other run-of-the-mill places.
Right. They just charge a big bunch of money and stuff.
Yeah.
I think Kelly's getting the information there, but we'll ask her about that. in
I thought
just
I
a
was
second.
getting a credit card.
So, John, contract law is that if she'd had a couple of cocktails on her way in.
You've always got capacity, but it's Vegas,
Anything goes.
Well, but there it
I was just there last week.
It enhances the capacity.
Right,
Yeah.
We don't enforce them unless you've had a couple drinks.
Yeah.
In fact, the kiosk is right past the bar.
Yeah.
I am so, doing what I did for a living, blood, guts, poop, vomit, could deal with a lot. I couldn't deal with roaches.
Right.
When I was in medical school, I had a studio apartment in D.C., and I had a pull-out, one of those pull-out things. I'd put it into the middle of the living room, and I would spray 2 rings of Raid around the bed every night before I went to sleep. I'm like a little girl. If I saw a roach now, I would be up on the counter. It's just this phobia I have that it just drives me nuts, even talking about it.
Dimitri, I think you mentioned the television. I've seen that before too, where they like electronics because they're warm.
I don't know why.
And I think they eat some of the wiring.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They crawl into TVs.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a roach that caused the bug in the first computers. You know that, right? No, seriously, you know why they call it debugging?
Why that?
Because back when they used to have these big IBM machines, and something went wrong and the machine wasn't working, and they found there was a bug inside that had somehow shorted off some wires. It was a moth. And so that's how debugging became to me, just figuring out what's wrong with the computer program.
It's like Audi and Volkswagen a while back had those soy-lined spark wires and rabbits and squirrels that just set up shop.
I had a Subaru many moons ago that just ended up sitting in the garage for a few months.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they stripped that fucking car.
Really?
I mean, it was bad.
What kind of animal was it?
think like just little field mice and stuff did it.
Squirrels, field mice, rabbits even.
We were out in the country, and maybe it sat outside. I don't remember, but it's been a long time. But at the time, the people that had to go fix it were like they used peanut oil to lubricate the wires when they make the coated wires throughout the wiring harness or something.
Crap.
And it's that oil that the damn mice just zoom in on or something, or something like that as a lubricant when they're, I don't know how they did it, but it was. It apparently is like crack to a damn field mouse or something.
Yeah.
Hey, do you see this on line one? That's got to be a great conversation. If he's an entomologist, I would love to hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, is it possible
Hey, did that dude hang
to
up,
ever
Eric?
Yeah.
get rid of him
We can
totally?
call him back once
To make
Okay.
an apartment?
Scott has an issue or a comment on lease.
Yep.
He's an entomologist.
I'm going to go right to
You
him.
might want to go straight to him,
I
even
am.
though you have these two.
I am.
I'll let them know, to hold.
The timeshare dude, don't we have an expert on that?
We do.
Okay, can we get them on when we get Eric's paperwork and stuff? Or?
Yeah, let's get the
Okay.
paperwork
Yeah.
first and review it, because you might be able to actually answer the question before we get
I
that.
think you're overrating my expertise about things, too.
But we do.
You saw your Rolls Royce out there. That
Mhm.
implies huge expertise in something.
I thought it was an Aston Martin.
Well,
That's Tuesday.
only on Tuesday. Right. An entomologist.
What does an entomologist do?
What?
What is an entomologist?
It's an insect specialist. Oh,
Bug dude.
as opposed to an etymologist who's a word specialist.
You may be an etymologist because you could answer that question. Said you may be an etymologist if you could answer that
Right.
question. Yeah.
It's a good point.
Yeah. In our midst.
That's one thing I'm kind of glad we don't really have here in Colorado is a lot of roaches. I grew up in Georgia where they just exist.
just normal.
They,
Yeah, you have no choice.
I mean, we would do everything possible to, but you'd still have roaches. There would be a roach or two here and there that you would flip the lights on and you'd see it just scurry off, and there's just nothing you could do about that. But
Well, they used to, when I was in D.C., every now and then I would release a bomb. They would put, right?
yeah, we've done those too, and this poison dust, this stuff that probably kill you today that you could buy at the hardware store in 40-pound bags or something.
There's the DDT.
Yeah,
home kit. Yeah.
no rubber gloves or anything. Just grab it and whoosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I knew I was on call for the weekend, so it'd be like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would get home till Monday, I would release a bomb right before I left on Friday, and then 4 days later I'd come back and there'd be dead roaches all over the place.
Right. Yeah.
Just thinking about it.
Why, thank you, sir.
It's an incentive to finish med school. Yeah.
All right. Welcome back. John Fuller here with the Troubleshooter Network. We are rocking and rolling. One of the coolest things about this show is that we have such an amazing audience out there that sometimes we get calls from people that are experts that chime in and help educate us about what's going on. And so we're going to go right to Scott. Scott, I understand you are an entomologist. For the benefit of our listeners, what is that?
Okay, so I have degrees in entomology, which is the study of insects, and specifically I'm an urban entomologist because my work is around cockroaches and ants and termites and things like that.
So how can you...
I am a real bug guy.
Real live bug guy. So what do you have to offer with Alyssa's issue with these roaches in this apartment with her young child?
Okay, well, the first thing is that they really don't need to be spraying all those chemicals. There are a few, I guess I call them Stone Age companies that still do things the old-fashioned way, but we've got a lot of phenomenal baits, which are basically it's a food with a relatively non-toxic poison in it, so that the cockroaches are attracted to it, they eat it. and they die. So you can get rid of them completely without any spraying at all.
But Scott,
So
isn't
that's
the
the
issue
first
that,
thing.
I mean, it seems to me that it's more challenging in a big multifamily building where you have so many units. I mean, how can you ever really get, full saturation of a baiting program and just completely annihilate a population of roaches?
Okay, well, first of all, if it is actually an apartment complex and not a condominium complex with individual owners,
right,
it's real easy. It's just an accessibility thing. So if I can get in there and treat that, you don't have to, there's no prep involved, so the tenants don't have to complain that, they didn't have time to empty their cabinets and do all these other things. You can treat it while they're actually there. And so it's very easy. It's just a matter of coordinating that with the management company and having access.
So
you can go through every single unit.
Yeah. So how would you compare the cost of doing it correctly with the cost of hiring these hack companies or Stone Age companies that you're talking about that keep spraying and not really making any dent in the problem?
Okay, well, spraying is dirt cheap. The actual cost of a tank of insecticide is very, very cheap, and baits are very expensive. So up front, there's a huge difference.
Hey, Scott, how much?
If you're looking at an annual, what's that?
Oh, how long would it take? Let's say you had access to every apartment in the multifamily building. How long would it take to have basically 95 to 100% eradication?
Less than 3 months. Most of them will be dead within about 2 weeks. But of course, you're going to have eggs hatching in a few things. Sometimes there's deep pockets. There's a lot of variability. In sanitation. But quite honestly, if you're thorough and the baits work really well, and we combine that too with an insect growth regulator, which sterilizes them. So it's kind of a double whammy.
So let's say you run up against a landlord that's just, cost adverse. They're not gonna pay to do it correctly, and they keep paying for the really cheap way that doesn't seem to do anything because it lets them claim that they're trying to address the issue and that they're being very proactive. What would you then say to Lissa about the potential health hazards of her moving in with a young child with that sort of a spraying regimen going on so frequently?
Okay, well, the first issue is really the health aspects of the cockroaches themselves, and it's well documented that cockroach feces and cast skins, because they molt, so that you've got all the shed skins of the bugs, all those things induce asthma in children, and it's very documented. So it's something that's real serious that there's a lot of them, because we see that in inner city areas where there are a lot of cockroach problems and low income housing, kids have a lot of there's a high incidence of asthma. So that's one issue. Then of course too, from a chemical standpoint, depending on what the guys are spraying, it may or may not be a health concern for the tenants as well. And that one's hard to know because I have no idea what they're actually spraying in there.
Right. That's good
Scott,
information.
are you an academic or do you have a company?
I actually have a pest control company. I'm swamped though, so I don't even want to say the name of my company on the air. I don't need the extra business.
Right. Well, but that's great information. Let me ask you one other thing. In your experience, if if from an environmental standpoint a kid is induced, or introduced to these sheds and cast and poop and everything else, and gets asthma, that's something that follows with them the rest of their life, isn't it?
That is correct.
Okay. So, it seems to me that there ought to be the information out there to help Lissa if this company wants to really fight this battle, to say that maybe this is just not the right apartment and not the lease that they want to actually, try to enforce and stuff. Scott, have you ever acted as an expert in these kind of matters?
I have. been a long time, but I mean, it's definitely a habitability issue, you know, and we do have habitability laws, especially in the city of Denver. I'm not sure what city she's in.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, listen, Scott, thank you so much for calling in. That's been great information. We appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and we'll look forward to hopefully getting Alyssa out of this apartment and moving on. So thanks again. So we are nearing another break here. We do have a couple lines open. The number is 713-8255. That's 303-713-8255. We are going to, I promise, visit with Dan about his company and kind of explore some of the differences between the buyer's perspective insurance and the user's perspective after an event has happened that brings that insurance into play. Before we go to the break, I'm just going to visit real quickly and see if we need an expert. Marie, you have an issue with the sharpest rides. What's going on with your Enclave, Marie?
Yes, so I bought a vehicle back in March through the sharpest rides. I've been getting a runaround for the past 3 weeks to get my car worked on and stuff because I have a transmission issue.
Is there a warranty on it, or you just feel like they should be fixing it?
There's a warranty on it. The warranty is underneath a 6-month warranty with 60,000 miles.
You bought this warranty from the Sharper Rides when you bought the vehicle?
Yes, it came with it.
When did you buy this vehicle?
Back in March.
March of this year?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the problem with the Sharpest Rides? Are they refusing to honor it or refusing to work on it or what?
Just so they've been giving me the runaround of trying to work on it. And I'm a single mom of 3 kids and I have a baby on the way. And they are telling me that they have to go to the warranty manager and stuff. I call up there every week, every day, going up there and stuff like that. The warranty manager is nowhere to be found. He is not been keeping his word with me on to getting back to me or anything. Okay. So it's just been very frustrating.
Okay. Well, Marie, hang on a second. We'll be right back from this break. We're going to try to help you out, okay? Hang tight.
Okay.
Hey,
is that something that... I thought we had like a angel or something.
I can't figure
that
out,
Sharpest Rides.
So I was trying to get an email.
Hey, Kelly, do we have any kind of history with Sharpest Rides? Do we have any kind of history with Sharpest Rides, like anybody to contact, or are they a frequent bad guy, or...
Can you tell me where I enter? I can't figure out where to enter the email.
Can you please email me a link to that site?
Mm-hmm.
Can you please email me a link to this site?
Hey, Dimitri, do you want to call the Sharpest Rides for this game?
What's that?
Do you want to call the Sharpest Rides?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. I was just looking up a Channel 7 story on them. I mean, they have a terrible reputation.
They're a huge buy here, pay here operation.
It's a shithole.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And they threatened to sue, the owner threatened to sue Channel 7 3 times over one story.
I'm sure. I've actually had a case against them, and their attorney was just a
dick.
No, just
a douche
bottom feeder kind of guy, you know. But I mean, I got it resolved. You know,
let's call the attorney. No, if he's a total douche,
no, he wasn't actually. I shouldn't use that word. But
well,
you are who you represent, you know, to a degree.
Oh,
so
right. You're totally right.
it was a case where I forget what happened. Like a motor mount was missing or something, and it wasn't good.
Yeah. You should see this story. 100 complaints, blah blah blah. I mean, three lawsuit threads. Doc, if you email me a link to that, I'll take a look around that website and see if I can find a way for you to contact them. Who wants coffee?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
John?
I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
No thanks.
And yeah, to reiterate, I'll be happy to talk to
Okay.
them.
I don't know what else to do.
Talk to their lawyer.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of his name. You may get referred to. Yeah. Oh yeah. Bring it on.
My name is Tom Martino.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm glad I don't write
OM.
Yeah.
MARTINO.
My number is
I'm glad I don't write that errors and omissions.
right. In my opinion, you are a dirtbag. You know.
Yes.
When they start saying "my opinion," you know there's fixing to be some smack talk going on. You know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, in my opinion,
Typically. So on your end, in a claim, someone buys state minimums, you have assets at the yin yang. Insurance company's happy to pay a state minimum. I mean, that's easy peasy. It's $25,000, right? So, how do you guys do an asset search for that, or do you do an asset search to look for?
we drive out to their house. No, I'm just kidding. Most of the time, it's the carriers that are doing that because they've got to get permission before we can even tap into a policy. And if they don't think that there's sufficient coverage, they won't give us permission to settle, and they will go after the guy themselves. They will advance the 25 and independently go after the at-fault guy themselves. So they won't give permission to
That's
settle.
only a policy limit, though.
No.
Really?
Yes.
They can go.
Because their exposure is over policy limits.
Right.
So let's say that you have 100 of
Right.
and it's a big case, so you've got enough damages to carry it. If you've got a guy that's living in $1 million home and driving a Maserati with $25,000 of coverage, that dude ought to have enough assets to cover your 150 or 200 grand of stuff.
Right.
Certainly your 100 of that you've got over the 25 of BI.
Right.
And so they just won't agree to extend the BI or the policy limits in that situation. They'll literally go sue the other guy. They won't give you permission. They won't allow you to release the other guy for his 25, and they'll go after the full measure of damages.
Okay.
So I've only seen it happen once on one of my cases, but it's kind of cool when it happens. It makes things happen all of a sudden.
Yeah, I challenge one of my carriers. Very nice neighborhood. Houses are a couple $1 million pop. Mom and dad buy a daughter brand new car, 16th birthday. Comes down the hill, out of the neighborhood, rear ends the client, breaks her collarbone. Later, the client ends up having to have the other collarbone done because she's.
Doc, I'm going to text you back my email address. I'm going to text you back my email address.
I just texted it to you.
Yeah, but I can't read a website on my tiny little phone.
Multi-million-dollar house, brand new car for a kid, the whole thing.
Okay.
So you
So
have my email
my
address.
client, I have written at 500 combined single limit plus 500 UM. So she goes back into her own carrier. They cut the check for the 500 UM. And I kept pushing the carrier. I'm like, these guys got assets at the yin yang. Like, why are you paying this? So and insurance companies always tell me that they do asset analysis and go after.
Right.
I don't see it. I don't know if it's like they don't.
Yeah.
To make it public or out in the open because it makes them look bad.
I've seen it happen on one case, but the reality is not that many people have free and clear homes and free and clear assets and are really just textbook poster childs of rich. They're up to their necks. Okay, John Fuller here on the Troubleshooter Network, getting back to the issues that we're going through today. So we're going to help Marie out here in just a second. I've got yet another cockroach caller.
What?
Calling in to comment. We're going to take that first because we always appreciate our callers with comments. So, Bill, what is going on with these cockroaches? How can we help?
This was around 1980.
Okay.
We moved from downtown Denver to Thornton, and the cockroaches moved with us.
Uh-oh.
I mean, they were thick. I tried everything. I'd set bombs off on the weekend, and we would go down to my in-laws and spend the weekend, and nothing worked.
What did you do?
Finally, remember Paul Harvey?
Yep.
He was advertising this stuff. It was called Roach Proof. And I think it was some kind of boric acid stuff. And I bought some, and I put it around the house, and it worked. Because then we bought a new house, and they didn't move with us.
Now, did you disclose the cockroach problem to the new buyers?
We were renting where the cockroaches were.
I'm just kidding there. I think that's, I think that borax is...
threw away a refrigerator because they were just swarming inside, in the back of it and all the, I mean, they was thick.
Yeah, that's disgusting. Well, thanks for that information. I think the borax is really along the same veins of what the expert that called in was bait stations and stuff that actually gets into the pores of the legs and stuff of the cockroaches, and that's how the poison enters the system rather than a spray or something that just gets on the surface. So I appreciate it, and now we know the rest of the story. Paul Harvey, thanks for calling in, Bill. I appreciate it. So, Marie, back to you, my friend. So listen, you know that the sharpest rides is they get a lot of complaints, and there's a lot of articles out there about people that have issues and problems and that make complaints and sometimes file lawsuits and stuff. We would like to give them an opportunity to help do the right thing with you and see if we can get you, get them to take a look at your car and see if we can't get you some help. And so I'm going to ask our deputy Dimitri to speak with you, get a little bit more information, and to actually reach out to the sharpest rides and give them that opportunity to do the right thing. You're a single mom. You really need a working car. I can't think of a more, deserving person to have them step up and help you. You bought the warranty, and it's time for them to do the right thing by you. And I'm sure that Dimitri can impress upon them how important it is that they step up and do the right thing. So, Dimitri?
Yeah. Hey, I'll be really happy to. I'll speak with a caller offline, kind of get some summary of what the problem is. And, I've always had really great luck dealing with dealerships. Regardless of their previous reputation, I ignore that during my initial phone call. And because most of the time it's kind of a miscommunication problem or somebody didn't get the message or something like that. But I'd say more than half the time they step up and do the right thing.
Hey, so that's what we want to see. That's the important thing.
Except O'Mara. And they never called me back. They never responded to my emails.
And if they do, we will dutifully report that they have done the right thing for Marie. And so we'll give them that opportunity. So, Marie, hang on. We're going to get your contact information. Dimitri will be in touch with you soon, and we'll see if we can't help you out, okay? Thanks for calling in.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Appreciate it. So, Mr. Dan, we were talking a little bit off air, and this is exactly the kind of stuff that I want us to get into. And it's just the nuts and bolts of, listen, we live in a state where we have abysmally low limits that are required by law. You can, have a completely complying policy of insurance, but it only has $25,000 of liability coverage. So for the benefit of our listeners that don't know, liability coverage is what pays for the other guy's injuries if you get into an accident. So it's the coverage that you carry so that the other guy doesn't come directly after you. So it's literally a policy of protection. Doesn't do anything for you in the way of your medicals and that kind of stuff, but it literally protects you from the damage that you did to the other party if you're at fault for an accident. And so, Dan, maybe the best starting place is just, tell me about the discussions that you have with people about the appropriate level of insurance, because from my perspective as a plaintiff's attorney, there's almost no circumstance where 25 is enough.
Exactly. Any clients that come into to our agency that we write, we have a minimum in-house. We won't write a policy under 100, 300, 100. That's nothing to do with us or our income. It's just that we feel like that is the minimum base level of getting a decent level of coverage to take care of any sort of, well, not any, but take care of a vast amount of losses that you may have. We were talking a little bit earlier is that people are kind of confused with insurance. Is that, hey, I found a policy, I bought it, it was cheap, it saved me money. When we're talking about that, people, I use the parallel of cake. It's like saying to your friends, hey, I have cake. Okay, what does that mean, John? Is that like a chocolate cake? Is it a cupcake? Is it a bundt cake? You know, insurance is a lot the same way. You can't just say you have insurance. So if you're buying state minimums at $25.50, you're setting yourself up for loss, especially if you have any assets, or if you do enough damage to where you have garnished wages. So what we've found over the years too, especially now with the frequency of uninsured or underinsured motorists, which is probably about 30%, is that we're seeing a lot more clients go into the back end of the policy, what's called uninsured or underinsured motorists.
Yeah.
And we can pick this up after the break and talk a little bit more.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. So. I'm trying to really hit the brakes spot on. Trying to be a good little host.
Yeah. They got to pay the bills.
So that's the top of the hour. That'll be maybe a good 5-6 minutes of break. So if you need to go to the restroom or something, now's a really good time to do it. You know?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Have you been here before?
Yeah.
Okay, you know where everything is and stuff.
Yeah.
The bathroom is kind of around the building. You go straight through this deal and down that far hallway, and then at the end of it, kind of do a U-turn, and it's right there. God, I can't think of that guy's name, but you know, he did a little bit of everything, that attorney. You'd see him in the criminal courts and stuff with an occasional case, and then I came to find out that he repped them when I had a case, but I can't think of his name. But
what about him?
I was just trying to think of who he was, but I...
Oh, the scumbag attorney? Or the bottom feeder attorney?
The attorney, you know.
Okay.
I used to see him in court. He would have a couple little oddball criminal cases with DUIs or something, and then when I had the case against him, I kind of put two and two together of who he was and all that. So we got everything worked out.
Oh, good.
It was good. I can't say that it didn't, but
I'll withdraw my previous characterization of this character.
Good. That was a prudent withdrawal of the previous character assassination.
Well, I was hoping it would be a good scumbag lawyer story.
I don't talk smack about my brothers and sisters on the bar, you know.
What about the scumbags and
You're
the
like
douchebags?
an honorary attorney. We just bestowed you with the honorary degree. You gotta get down with the program.
I'll be honorarily judgmental.
No, you're gonna lose your status.
Damn it!
All right, just
better
take that right away from you.
Yeah.
Just
All right, I don't want to dick around with that. All right.
I don't want to risk that. That is bad business, you know.
Doc, so that link you sent me?
Yeah.
Right there shows a phone number and another hot link called Contact Neighborhood Services.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say is like contact. Is there a phone number?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to send them an email. So
Well, that's what they don't list an email address, but if you click Contact Neighborhood
So if you
Services,
go to neighborhood services. Just switch on. Go to neighborhood services.
I am there.
Okay. Now, how do you send them an email or text? That's what I couldn't.
Okay, no text. You can click that blue typewritten line that says Contact Neighborhood Services.
Okay, so let me.
You have your own firm, or you?
Yeah, I've been a solo for probably.
All right, are you on? Does it say code enforcement complaint form?
No, the page you sent me
Maybe a little more.
takes me to ColorSprings.gov.
Much nicer.
Neighborhood services.
Right. and
Yeah,
if you
it's,
click on that.
it has
Here's what-
advantages and disadvantages.
Here's what I'm talking about.
Capital is the hard thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's,
the complaint form.
Okay,
I mean,
that's not the link.
it's like any business, you know.
Well,
you
it
have
is.
to you have to treat it like a business. You have to stay sufficiently capitalized.
This
to
is
be able
the link that you sent.
to, you know,
Okay, yeah,
deal
right.
with the ebbs and
Listen,
flows and stuff.
okay,
And
explore neighborhood services.
if you do
blah, blah,
that,
blah,
you're
all this
fine.
bullshit, you go
But
past
so
these
many
pictures.
people, like,
Here's the contact.
there are so many like really
Phone number,
good attorneys
and another
that
link
are
called
just
Contact
terrible
Neighborhood
business
Services.
people, and they get a big case, and next thing you know, they're driving a nice car,
Why am I engaged?
and the next thing you know, they're going out of business.
Right. They're selling the car.
broke as hell, and it's sad because they're such good attorneys. They're just not
I'm
good
so bad.
Okay, you want me to read
at
it?
damn business. Yeah,
Wait a second.
but then they go work for
Okay,
Darren
go
and
ahead.
stuff.
Colorado Springs.
Wait a second.
Go for what?
They go work for Darren.
Oh, yeah.
you know,
Yeah. One of the 80. Yeah.
right?
.gov.
But
Forward
it's just,
slash?
it's just hard to find somebody that can do both.
Neighborhood
you know,
services.
but because it's a lot of work, and when you're a solo, the buck stops with you. There's never a time that the phone can't ring and everything else. So
I explain to my kids that oftentimes when things go wrong, there's somebody that you can go to correct that. I'm like, I am that.
I'm that guy.
I'm the end. But like, if it doesn't resolve there, then
right. Well, that's a good lesson, but my wife and I will be, whatever the hell vacation is. I don't really know what that means, but we both are.
I see what's happening.
She's in a completely different business, but when the phone rings, the phone rings. You can rarely. We went on one trip out of the country where she literally left her work phone and her computer behind and was like, "I'm not available."
I wish I could do that.
One trip in 15 years that we've been married, no longer than that. Long time. One time she did that, and it was liberating, but there was true
Good. Did you see
anxiety.
the contact us?
Yeah.
Okay.
To leave that thing and walk away.
I have one of those things that goes on my laptop that makes it a triple screen.
Yeah.
And I travel with that.
Yeah.
And as soon as I get in, I set it up wherever we're at.
Right.
Just have it ready. And my staff knows how to get me. And then,
I bought one of those things. It looks so cool, but it's so freaking heavy.
You're welcome. Good luck with that.
I was really surprised how heavy it was.
Because I'm always going in and out of airports and stuff with not for work, just me. I go back and forth a lot. And, man, I just, at that point, I just become very weight conscious about what you're carrying back and forth and stuff. That stupid screen was like a whole nother laptop or something.
I had surgery on my back earlier this year. That means more, though, I think. I mean, my kids are older now, but I remember going on trips to them. I'm like, oh, Lord, these suitcases are like 100 pounds apiece, and I'm the one who has to carry them. But, yeah. So it has to be on, then program. On, then program.
Yeah. So when we're back on, you're going to be on program, and then you'll hit on tax return.
Ripped off, bad news. You need advice so you don't have to lose. We'll come running just as fast as we can. Troubleshooter's gonna help the common man.
This is the Troubleshooter Show. Now, Tom Martino.
Welcome to the Troubleshooter Show. This is John Fuller filling in for Tom Martino. Many of you know me. I'm a personal injury attorney in Denver and have been for the last 23 years. We are here today talking about all things insurance as well as taking care of your problems. We are here to solve problems, take complaints, answer questions. If you've been scammed, if you've been ripped off, if you have a problem that we can help you with, no matter the subject, give us a call. The number is 713-8255. You can also contact us at help@troubleshooter.com. So that's 713-8255. Give us a call. We have some open lines right now. With us in the studio today is Dan Mahoney. Dan is with the Insurance Group of Denver. He is an independent agent, meaning he's not beholden to any particular insurance company and is therefore able to give you unbiased advice about the insurance products that you're considering. And before the break, we were talking about, limits on certain policies and how, 25 is just an abysmally low requirement by the state of Colorado. And I'll turn it back over to Dan at this point. He was talking about in his firm, they actually won't sell a policy that's minimal limits. You guys have requirements, at least internally, that you at least have 100, 300, and I think that's great. I don't think 100 is, well, I would say this, for the vast majority of claims, 100 is enough. Our average claim is probably less than 100. It's definitely less than 100. But when it's more than 100, it tends to be a lot more than 100. And that's where you may regret having only 100,000. So I want to segue into talking about, umbrellas and stuff like that. And then I'm going to kind of inject some real world stuff into the conversation from my perspective as a plaintiff's attorney. So I'll let you pick it back up where we left off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John. When you look at your policy, you're going to see some numbers. You're going to see typically 100/300/100.
Explain what that means.
And then you'll see repeat again, 100/300. So the first 100 means outbound care to the other person that you may injure in an accident. The 300,000, that second number, that's an aggregate amount. So if you hurt someone else outbound, 3 people at 100,000 each, 6 people at 50,000 each, however you break that down, that is basically the pool of money you're working with. That last number, that last 100 in this scenario, this is going to be property damage. So this is going to be covering other vehicles, school buses, motorcycles, trees, houses, cows, even a highway sign.
So let me interrupt you there. You talked about the total amount necessary for an accident. So it's 100 per person, but 300 per accident. So what happens if you have 4 people in the car?
So if you have 4 people in the car, that second number, that 300,000, that aggregate is going to be that share that's going to be divided between those 4 people in that instance.
And how do they divide that?
That's going to be based. It's going to be claims based, basically what their actually loss is. Now, if there's a lot of damage, like you said, majority of cases seem to stay around or 100,000, but as you said, they can escalate pretty quickly. With our clients, again, 100, 300 is kind of our baseline. We prefer doing a 250, 500, 100, even what you call a 500,000 combined single limit, which means each level has $500,000. On top of that, we're big advocates of umbrellas. Umbrellas are relatively inexpensive. An umbrella is just as it says. It just sits over your home and your auto, and it just amplifies that underlying coverage. So that's that what if. That's that worst case scenario. And I've seen it happen.
So all that is great and wonderful from a liability perspective, but all that insurance coverage in the world does nothing if it's you that gets injured and the other car has those same minimal limits that we're talking about. Where does that come into play?
So now we're going back to the uninsured or uninsured motorist. Statistics are kind of all over the place, but I've seen upwards of 17% of the drivers in Colorado just don't even have insurance. Factoring for bad insurance, we're looking at about 30% in all. So when you're driving today, if you look at the 3 cars around you, one of them doesn't have insurance or doesn't have enough.
That's absolutely true.
What could happen?
Yeah. I did some research one time. The actual numbers in Colorado are 2/3 of the drivers either have minimal limits or no insurance at all in Colorado.
2/3?
2/3, almost 66%. Either have minimal limits, which is complying, that's legal, or no insurance at all. So, I mean, it's not just the one car, it's both of the cars on either side of you either have no or minimal limits. So when I talk to my clients about buying insurance, from my perspective, whatever you buy for the other guy is great, but really the focus ought to be what you're buying for your family.
Right. Right.
Because that's the most important cargo that you carry is those people that are in your car that you can control.
And when we're quoting people, often we see that flip-flopped. We see that you are buying the least amount of coverage for yourself and the most for the other guy.
Yeah.
Or when we're in a situation where someone's out shopping quotes, they'll come back, they'll be like, hey, I found this great deal. We have a good relationship with our clients. They'll be like, here, send us a copy of what you find. And oftentimes that's what we find is that they sacrifice you to lower that premium, make it more attractive to you to come in and buy. But that underinsured motorist, again, it's matching your policy levels. I'm a big fan of 250, 500 or more. In that situation, you do get hit by one of those people. And now your costs, your cost of living, your endeavors, you have a pool of money that you can go back to. And I am seeing this used more and more and more every year. It used to be pretty, I would never see anybody even touch it. But it's become a reality now that the other guy's not doing their job because they're just buying insurance. They don't know what that means.
Hey, Jan, I have a question. So the people who have the minimal insurance, are they people who can declare bankruptcy? And the main question is, someone has minimal coverage and they get a judgment. Is that judgment dischargeable if they declare bankruptcy?
So, and I'm going to bring John on this because I've always been trained that in a situation where you declare bankruptcy, a bankruptcy is essentially a contract breaking your financial contracts, which you could actually forgive the insurance company from protecting or defending you in that claim, which means now you're back on your own.
Well, I mean, the short answer, Doc, is yes. I mean, but the longer answer is, what does it matter? I mean, if you get a judgment of $2 million against somebody that has no assets, it's worthless. They don't even need to go to the court to declare bankruptcy. You're never going to collect your $2 million. So that bankruptcy, discharge is about as valuable as that, to them as that judgment is to you.
Well, my point is that the people who have this, they don't care.
They don't care.
They have the minimum insurance because they have to, but then they say, well, look, you can't, there's nothing to collect.
Right.
So why should I pay for more insurance when really I don't need it?
So that's my typical argument is that the reason you buy more insurance is so that you're allowed to buy greater limits for your family.
Correct.
People call me all the time and I welcome their calls and I truly do. And the call goes like this: how much insurance do I need? Right. And for some reason they think I'm better qualified because I exhaust policies frequently,
right.
that I'm a better judge of that and stuff. So when we come back from the break, I want to talk about, like what happens when you don't have enough coverage. And I'm sure that you've had clients in that position. I've had people call me. I've had plaintiffs that have damages far greater than coverage. We're going to talk about that when we come right back.
Hey, John. If you want, I have my own auto policy declarations page here, and I'd like to ask Dan to evaluate them.
We've already done that, Dimitri. You have great insurance, okay?
Well, but
I'm just kidding.
In the context of this, how much can I expect my umbrella policy to amplify this?
Right.
Dan, what's your email? What's your email address?
250, 500 on your outbound liability. So your umbrella, whatever that multiple is going to sit on top. So if you have a $1 million umbrella, it becomes 1.25 per person, 1.5 aggregate.
So umbrella is not limited to these coverages. It actually amplifies by million.
Save it.
Save it for there.
Yeah.
Let me email this to you.
There you go. Or you can I can see it from here.
You can? Because look, I'm going to ask you about my medical payments coverage. I'm going to ask you uninsured motor vehicle coverage, death, dismemberment, loss of sight coverage. I'm going to ask about all that shit.
And then the secondary part of the question is,
and then the sub-tertiary
master of three. I have a 4-part question with three subparts, and you're just like, geez,
But
Here we go.
I'll usually ask no more than 4 at a time.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's easier to keep track.
We have a whiteboard.
You only need one piece of paper to get the whole question on. You know? Dimitri pulls up his deck page the other day and shows it to me. I was like, that looks like a farmer's policy or State Farm.
I was going to say State Farm from here.
That looks like State Farm. He's like, yeah, how did you know? It's like, I've seen so many of these damn things, it's not even funny.
We actually keep deck pages.
Yeah.
Clients send into us because
I keep
reference them
policies
all the time.
you know, because it's the policy language that I...
And Control F is your best friend.
John, now, if God forbid, I'm liable, they can't hire you to sue me, right? Because I've received legal advice from you.
Not on that.
Yeah, well, my policy. Why do you think I sent you my policy declarations page? It's a preemptive move. I'm going to email it to all the lawyers.
Approved.
Yeah, I'm going to email it to all the lawyers in town.
Charging for these
Just retain every firm in Colorado at $1.
I don't think I have to. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't need to retain anybody. I can just discuss my issue with somebody, and they're done, right?
They have an exchange of money.
It depends. I mean, technically, I actually had a case where my the kid I represented was run over by a vehicle driven by a former client.
Oh, shit.
And that was not a conflict.
What?
Nothing about the representation for either case overlapped in any sense of the word.
Right. Different.
So it was different issues, different insurance, different everything. And actually the second one was a big commercial case where there was buku coverage. There was not any sort of, potential shortcoming of coverage or anything. But we had it looked at by all kinds of ethics people to give me an opinion, and they're like, "You're good."
Wow. And defense did not object to you being on the case?
Nope.
It's because they didn't notice?
Oh, they knew.
Oh, they knew. Shit.
Yeah. They knew the good dude knows me. That attorney was my attorney. I mean, it was known to everybody. So, but a number of years had gone by too, so that probably didn't hurt anything.
Yeah.
He was a good guy. I mean, he just made a mistake and was just mortified over it.
Yeah.
So, in many respects, it probably helped me that he was who he was, and I have nothing but good things to say about him. He was a great client, great guy, great everything, but just unfortunately hurt this kid pretty bad.
Jeez.
That's why you have insurance.
That's why I have insurance.
Yeah, we had a call just last week from an 80-some-year-old gentleman whose net worth was well over $1 million, and he was in a car crash that he was at fault for. He admitted to it, and that lady's medical bills were astronomical, and he only had minimal liability.
Probably the same dude I was talking to. Same.
Oh yeah, we referred him to you.
Yeah.
You don't do that defense, do you?
No, but I tried to get the guy to some. We'll talk about that case because that's one of the ones I wanted to visit about because it just makes the point that we, the time to discover that you don't have enough insurance is
long before the crash.
Not after you've spent 20 years amassing a fortune and all of a sudden get an accident. So
that would be a good one for you to follow up on the air. Huh?
Yeah, I'll definitely talk about his case. I'm going to change a couple facts, but and then MedPay and UM MedPay, or not UM MedPay, but Umbrella UM.
Right, which is pretty rare, but you can do it.
I wouldn't buy an umbrella without it.
Right, and not a lot of companies offer it.
Really?
Because it's
I've always had that. All right. Good afternoon. John Fuller here. We are moving rapidly forward in the day. We're talking about insurance stuff. If we can be of help to you, give us a call at 303-713-8255. We are here to solve your problems and help out with any issue that you have. In the studio today, we have Dan Mahoney. Dan is a principal, meaning the owner of the Insurance Group of Denver, and they're an independent agent, meaning they sell a number of different lines of insurance, but they're not beholden to any one, which is kind of cool because you're going to get the straight skinny and you're not going to get the party line of some, fill in the blank insurance company. And I was looking at your list of carriers that you write for, and most of them I recognize, but there are some that are absent, and most of them are kind of the big guys that you hear, advertising around. The ones we always have problems with, like Allstate and State Farm and Farmers and that kind of stuff. I would venture a guess that you're able to put together more diverse policies that are more custom tailored for your clients by being an independent agent, rather than just having a set line of products that you can sell for one carrier. Is that
Absolutely.
fair? Talk to us about the differences that you have in the stuff that you can do for clients.
Sure. It all starts at the beginning when we talk to a client. I really want to know a lot more about the client than just their name and what they want to buy. Assets drive a lot of that. If you have a lot of rental properties, things like that. Different carriers specialize in different areas. And we kind of were talking off air about uninsured motorists and umbrellas. A lot of companies are kind of shying away from that because it's a big loss point. But we can still do those. We can still put those together. So we really, truly can customize for you a package that makes sense. I'm a big advocate of if we have one thing for you, we keep everything in one carrier, especially if we're going to deal with an umbrella. We don't want any company pointing to someone else saying, oh, this is your issue, this is the overlap, this is double indemnity, this is stacking. We don't want to deal with any of that. We want it all nice and clean. At the end of the day, your cost is probably going to come out about the same as where you're at. And even just raising your underlying limits from, state minimums to a relatively decent amount is pretty inexpensive.
Right.
To take that next step up to go to a 250, 500, 500 combined single limit, you're talking a couple $100 a year. You add an umbrella, depending on the carrier and what you have, it's going to range between $200 and $1,200 a year. But again, if you have those assets and you have things at risk, you really need to have those things. On a side note, it's interesting, the gentleman who called in earlier about the apartment with the bug problem. Right now, the way the market is, this is a hard market right now. So nobody wants to write, especially, Colorado is one of the harder hit states after the Superior fire or Marshall fire, Troublesome Creek, all those things. Rates have gone absolutely nuts. And as a hard market, even my agency, we struggle to even find policies right now because a lot of carriers just don't want to write business. So it's a unannounced moratorium, if you will. So if you do call us, we're happy to help you and talk through it. It's just I don't know if we have an option for you necessarily, but as the market comes back online, that's going to improve over time. We do help out some financial firms around town that provide advice to folks on retirement. And we also do reviews for their clients as well, make sure everything's stacked up and makes sense on their company.
Hey, Dan, I have a question.
Yeah.
One of the things that you see on TV all the time is this bundling. So does it really save you money to have your home and auto with the same company?
From a straight financial standpoint, it's usually the same. I'm sorry. If you're splitting everything off and trying to take advantage of multiple markets, you're damaging yourself because you are giving up a lot of multi-line discounts. And keep in mind, insurance is all about risk. So if I'm a product person or underwriter with an insurance company and you're coming to me with 5 different lines, that's 5 different points of risk. I know that you are going to be a better value to me because you're not going to have 5 areas of risk all happen at once.
But there's a bigger issue with that, and it's one that we kind of run into. It's like, I think if I'm talking strictly as an insured, as a guy that's buying insurance and stuff, based on my experience, the more opportunities you give an insurance company to point the finger at somebody else and say that other company or that other policy should be the one that's on the hook for this loss, the more apt they are to do that. So when you create this potential, I don't know if conflict is the right word, but opportunity maybe, between, say, a homeowner's and an auto policy? You're out on a bicycle and you crash into somebody. Is it homeowners or is it auto? Well, it's most likely homeowners in that situation. But what if it's an e-bike where it's a motorized bike or something? Not as clear. That's more of a motorized vehicle. Is that going to go under the auto policy? Maybe.
Or if you're hit by a driver, right now you are triggering.
I mean, we do so much more in battling these issues behind the scenes where we legit have a team of attorneys that's saying we think the policy says this and our interpretation is that, and we have to harmonize those two. And so, I mean, that's part of what's so important about getting somebody on your side is that these policies are subject to interpretation. It's never just as easy as looking at a list and saying, yep, that's covered. You remember the old farmers commercials where the guy in the old tweed sport coat was like, we covered it, and that's not reality. Reality is we denied it, and then we got sued and we begrudgingly decided to pay that claim down the road after, so-and-so attorney, whatever. It's just, the first question was, are we better off with the bundle? Yeah, I think so. To the extent that you can, within reason. I mean, don't pay an exorbitant premium for that privilege, but if you can get everything under one house,
it makes sense.
I think it makes sense to do it.
It's like, Doc, if you go to lunch today, you go to McDonald's for your fries, Burger King's for your burger, and a gas station for your soda because you're trying to maximize money. You miss the boat. You're spending the money anyway. You're giving up discounts, and you're giving up the continuity of coverage that you really want when something goes wrong. You don't want to have to point at a whole bunch of people or have the carriers pointing at each other. They love that. That's great for them.
Absolutely.
I mean, they can stall out a court case forever just by reversing the point.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And so, practice pointer to most people, if you're out there shopping around, really take the time to try to find the best deal that has everything under one, umbrella, for lack of a better word. Because I think in the end, you'll find that you have better coverage and a better opportunity to get your damages taken care of. So we're going to go to a quick break. We will be right back and continue the discussion. Give us a call if we can help you. We've got open lines right now. 713-8255 is the number.
I'm working on a case where it was a multi-car accident, and the guy who was hit, well, the responsible party, insurance company, has subrogated part of it to a second insurance company, and they can't get that second insurance company online so that this guy can get paid. So I told him what Tom always says, sue the guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Sue him in small claims court, and he will make sure that his insurance company gets it back from State Farm is the one that's not helping him. Right. I said, so just sue the guy in small claims court, and that'll be.
If I sue someone in small claims court and they bring in an attorney to defend themselves, and the attorney naturally wants to remove the case to, let's say, county or district court, just to make it hard on me, can they do that without actually having a counterclaim against me that exceeds the jurisdictional limit of small claims?
No, not usually.
It has to remain in small claims unless they bring a counterclaim against me. Okay. I did have somebody threaten me.
Attorneys don't like being in small claims court either, but
Get paid $40 for 3 hours.
Well, they can still charge their own.
They can charge, but it's just you can't really big boy somebody in small claims court.
Yeah, exactly.
Judges gotta listen to the.
Yeah, they can't out-lawyer me.
No, but I would assume that the only time a lawyer goes there is if you're suing a company.
No, anybody can bring
any
defendant.
Oh, I know.
You just can't start with one.
But do most people bring an attorney to small claims court?
No, almost nobody does.
Right.
You
So,
have that option.
But I will tell you, part of the reason for that is that when you have an attorney, they tend to get resolved before going to court. The attorney finally steps up and gets the carrier to pay the damn claim or whatever's going on, They're like, well, we had no idea before you got this default judgment or something, So.
You're talking about your accident. A friend of mine just saw at a conference, he's a friend of mine, I just saw him at a conference, picks up his brand new Toyota Tacoma. He's an agent or broker, He's driving down the street, just flat out rear end someone going 65. And they take him off.
He rear-ended?
Oh, yeah, he rear-ended the guy in front of him. Take him off in an ambulance, and the state patrol guy is talking to him, and he said, the party in the middle, because it was 3 cars, he said, did they feel 1 tap or 2? And the officer went back and clarified it, that they felt 2 taps. He told him, please put that in the report. Puts 2 tap in the report. 6 weeks later, he gets a demand letter for policy limits. The adjuster calls him, and he knows a little bit about insurance. He's like, it was a double tap. He's like,
what's the significance of it?
So
crashes.
So the person in front of him had already hit the car in front of him. But now they're trying to blame him. That
I now understand.
He was the one who
for
caused,
all of them.
right?
So he didn't cascade the entire chain of events.
Right. Okay. So then the insurance company denies, just not a chance. Let's talk somewhere else about this. So right away they turn around and send him a $5 million demand, and that's when they go back and pull the police report out and send it to the attorney that there's a double tap, and all of a sudden the attorney's
wait, $5 million? How did they come up with $5 million?
Well, that's why.
Did they just
the best 2 words that John Fuller ever said in his life, besides "I do" to marry his wife, who he's way out of his league. But the other 2 words are, what are your favorite 2 words? That dash cam.
Dash cam, yeah.
If they had a dash cam, that would be open and shut whether or not it was 1 or 2 taps.
Right.
And so how?
Right.
I mean, when you present somebody with a $5 million demand, I mean, you should be able to back that up, right? Because somebody is going to say, "How did you come up with $5 million?"
Why does that offend you?
It does. It puzzles me.
But you don't know what policy limits are. You don't know what you're up
I like
against.
that question. I just vague as shit. Why does that offend you, Dimitri?
No, I'm not offended.
There's billboards all over town that say that you should get $5 million.
I mean, listen. Everything that we do is predicated on what we anticipate being able to do in front of a live jury.
Exactly. That's
so
the basis of my question.
If I make a demand for $5 million, it's because I believe that the combination of economic and non-economic damages will justify that.
Right.
So you can't get it if you don't ask. So if you've got the damages to support that and the policy limits are there,
were the policy limits there? You had $5 million in liability?
No. But it was a double tap. And if he was, truly a single tap, he would have told him that. And then his carrier would have went ahead and paid.
Well, it's not the end of the world. It just means that there's 2 insurance companies involved. Now, what sucks is when one's got a lot of insurance and the other one has not so much. Like 250 and a 25. Well, if the jury can't figure it out, it's going to be 50-50, and you're going to max the one out even though there's not enough coverage, and you're going to probably not max the other even though there was enough coverage. So, we have those issues all the time where is it 1 accident or 2?
Wow.
Comes up a lot.
Wow. Interesting.
Well, think of this, too. And I'm just going to use Geico as an example. If you're the master of state minimum policies,
master of what?
State minimum policies. Mm-hmm. You can calculate pretty close to the dollar what you're going to pay out in claims in a year. There's no wild horse there. It is what it is, which is part of the genius of it. But it's screwing everybody.
So Geico's the master of state minimum.
Most what we call it direct. So Progressive, but Geico, USAA, things like that, where you call in. They all know that they're going to win you by the total cost of the premium because nobody knows what the coverages are, and they don't want to listen. So whoever's going to deal the
All right, good afternoon. We're back. This is John Fuller for the Troubleshooter Network, and we are moving along here. We're talking about insurance coverage, and I'm talking with Dan Mahoney, who is the principal of Insurance Group of Denver. They're an independent agent. The cool thing about that is they're not beholden to one of the normal carriers. They have a whole list of carriers that they're able to really custom formulate coverages to meet your needs and stuff. And so one of the things that we were talking about earlier, and everybody's already, can they come take my house or my car or my dog or whatever it is that you have to satisfy a creditor. And those are largely wives' tales. You don't really hear about people taking people's houses, literally, as much as you might think based on the TV commercials and stuff that you hear out there. But the risk is very real, and it's something that people need to be aware of, the actual mechanics of how that works in the real world. And so every now and again we get a call, and we did recently from a listener to the show here, and not to use him as an example, but I think that it really paints a picture that I suspect a lot of listeners are in. Mm-hmm. And this gentleman had worked his whole life and had amassed, a house that was paid for, that in Colorado, a decent home. I believe it was just over $1 million or so. And that,
he admitted to a net worth of over $1 million. Yeah. We didn't pursue it further, but he was definitely a man of means.
But not huge
crazy.
Means. We're not talking like the Rockefellers here or something. We're just talking about a person that lived his whole life, that happened to pay off his mortgage, and the property appreciated. He's got a couple cars that are paid for, and an RV, and an old dog, and whatever. But the point is, at the age that this gentleman was, which was well into retirement, he's still driving, he's still out there, he still has risk. And I don't think a lot of people really believe that they have this risk, and they're tempted to just have the same old insurance that they've had their whole life. And maybe 20 or 30 years ago, having minimal limits made sense when he had less assets and less earnings and less risk, and probably cars at that time cost, $7,000 or something for a new car, whereas today they're $90,000 or $100,000. It seems like half the cars in the parking lot are, a pickup truck that's over $100,000 is not hard to do and stuff. And then you start thinking about this $25,000 that you've got for coverage, and you go, holy cow, this is not enough.
Doesn't keep up.
And so this particular caller got into an accident, and he didn't think it was that significant of an accident, but sure enough, the other party ended up going to the hospital. I think they were in an ambulance, so it wasn't just a bump, it was something halfway significant. And lo and behold, they ended up with an attorney, and he began to work through the issue of, do I have enough coverage? And the plaintiff's attorney was working through the issue of, what are we going to do with this guy? Okay? And it brings up this unique process that most people don't even know exists, which is the insurance companies and the lawyers all have to figure out what cards they've been dealt. And so if a guy has $25,000 of insurance and he's got $5 worth of assets, that may be the single most valuable thing that he owns, is that policy of insurance. And it may make absolute sense to take the 25, even though you may have, let's say, just for the sake of the argument, let's say you have $200,000 of damages. It may be the case that your strategic best move is to take that 25, because it's the most you're ever going to get from this guy. He's got two nickels to rub together in a $25,000 policy. God love him, right? But on the other hand, if the guy has $1 million or so of assets out there that are unencumbered by mortgages, and he just happens to have this policy that's the bare bones minimum that the state says that you can buy, you have to ask the question, is the guy voluntarily underinsured? What does that mean, voluntarily underinsured, Dan? It just means he didn't buy enough insurance relative to the number of assets that he has, right?
And he's also going along with what the state says.
He's just trying to save money, but, intentionally or not, he's putting his own assets at risk instead of spending a little extra money and buying that extra coverage. I mean, at its core, buying liability insurance is protection for your own assets. And so it came as quite a shock to this guy that, what do you mean, why are they wanting to know about my personal assets? Why are they wanting to know how much money I have in the bank and how much equity I have and how many stocks and bonds I have and, and what my cars are worth? Why are they asking me all these questions? And the simple fact was the plaintiff's attorney was evaluating, and probably the uninsured motorist carrier for the injured party, they were evaluating whether or not you were voluntarily underinsured.
Right.
And if they conclude that you were, then guess what? They could absolutely not agree to accept your 25, and they could instead decide to come after you because you have assets. And that's the worst thing that can happen to you when you're 75 or 80 years old and all of a sudden you're facing a judgment that could require you to sell your house or sell assets or cash in your stock account or something. You know, there's lots of assets that are not protected. That's the reality of getting in an accident and accidentally hurting somebody. Nobody says you did something on purpose, but not having enough insurance to protect you in the event that that happened. You know, if that same accident had happened and the guy had $250 or something and he's only got a house and maybe a couple cars and he's old and there's protections in place, the plaintiff's attorney would likely conclude that, you know, and the UM carrier would conclude that he's appropriately insured.
Right.
We're just going to take the $250 if it's offered, which it probably would be. We're going to take the $250 and we'll give him a complete release that lets this guy off the hook.
Right.
And John, can you, for both of you, you can get separate coverage. So if you have an old car, and can you get like minimal collision and maximum liability?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can get you don't have to have 25. It doesn't have to be what sort of.
You can get liability only of a big, huge number,
right,
and just not have Cadillac coverage for your car.
Okay.
I have a gnarly, ugly pickup truck that has more liability in the world, and it's straight.
No collision.
Yeah, there's nothing on there. If it disappears, it disappears.
And
God bless whoever would take that.
Exactly. It's probably worth more in the form of a check from an insurance company than any buyer would ever give you on it. So, you know, that's the backdrop that we're dealing with, is this real, you know, circumstance that happens to people when they just try to save a little money and get the bare bones minimum coverage, and they think this could never happen to me. And it does. And it did to one of our listeners here at the show. And I hate that more than anything because, you know, not only is this guy's, you know, whole retirement really in jeopardy, but that plaintiff that got injured, that person is trying to recover and be made whole. And I mean, I'm sure they're a good person and they don't want to take a guy's house or something crazy. So it's truly incumbent upon you to have enough insurance to really reflect today's marketplace, where a trip to the ER can be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in a heartbeat, and your 25, no matter what the law says, is just not enough coverage. So when we get back from break, we're going to talk about my two other favorite things, MedPay and MedPay waivers, and then we're going to get into umbrellas. So hang on a second, we'll be right back.
A lot of these questions A lot of these questions that Dimitri and I ask, not because we don't know the answer, it's because we think people who are listening think, and it keeps the conversation going, and it gives information to people who may be listening and say, you know, I wanted to ask this, but I couldn't get, you know, I don't want to call up just for a question. So we kind of, you know, ask things that we think people might want to know.
Right.
Dan, I have no expectation of privacy when I'm in this room, so anything I show you is totally on record. So
Dimitri's in his G-string in the studio today.
So if I flip it to you and say, Dimitri's got his deck sheet here, how would you evaluate that? Are you comfortable having that conversation?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the first thing I always look at is liability.
Can you see this up?
And, you know, going back to that last question, or going back to just the gentleman who voluntarily put himself in that position, if you want to save money on a policy, I can find you money to save.
Right.
And, you know, it's called the deductibles or self-insuring if you want to go liability only. And that's better math for me because I know if I have an accident, my old $3,000 truck is just going to the junkyard. I'm not getting any money.
Right.
But I went liability only on that to save that money so I could go to a 250, 500, or 500 combined single limit. Because if I was going state minimums and I have assets, all of a sudden, I don't know what my cost is going to be. Right. That's a wild card.
And also, on your beat-up truck, if you get collision, isn't it usually a deductible? So the deductible would be,
not if they pay first penny. anybody in. Your car has nothing, but they pay first penny anybody else. There's no deductible. And it's a sweet deal. It's, you know, and it's a great way to control the cost. Yeah. And for John, what's interesting is that I have a lot of clients that will be on Medicare, and they will want to opt out of MedPay.
You let them?
No, I tell them not to. Okay. But they all want to. I'm like, why would you do that?
Right.
Like,
Well, I'm going to talk about
costs.
that in a second. That's the dumbest thing you could do.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cheap on your insurance, right?
It's gotten really cheap. It used to be pretty expensive, but it's gotten really cheap. Yeah, and MedPay too. If you have guests in your car, I mean, if your mom driving carpool, man, if some kid doesn't have health insurance or doesn't have any, parents don't have any money, you're screwed. My kid's school actually make all the parents report insurance before you drive for a field trip. Of course, they don't know what the hell they're looking at. So
Right. Not a bad idea, though.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I know. I'm sure you told. How old you have kids, right?
Yeah.
I told my son, and I'm sure you guys did. Don't ever drive drunk. I don't care if it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I will get in the car and I will pick you up wherever the hell you are. If you're in Kansas, if you're in New York, I'll drive. Do not drunk. And he never did. He never was.
I had a client that I've been on the list for 15 years or so, I think. And right when I got on the list, I had a client call me, sent me their deck pages. She was kind of hesitant, had state minimums and everything. I recognized her name and I knew her husband, and he was in the legal field. And I'm like, and I know about you, and I used to work with him, and I'm like, you have assets. I'm like, you're up for a shit show. And not even halfway through dinner that night, I get a call from him that says, do everything. Add everything you possibly can to the pot. And like 10 years later, daughter goes through an intersection, sun glare, broadsides, newlyweds, puts them both in the hospital for 6 weeks.
Holy shit.
Boom, $2.5 million right out. So his umbrella and his underlying, just insurance company doesn't even hesitate. Here you go.
Yeah.
We're done. So, and now, if I had not joined Tom Martino, and they would have been all these years later.
How long did it take from crash to check?
That one was actually probably under a year.
Wow.
Actually, probably it was actually much less. I think it was much faster. I've had other ones that will go longer. Ones I got. I have a lot of clients with a lot of rental properties, and you end up with a dog bite, and your contract says they're not supposed to have a dog, but you were there and you saw the dog, and all of a sudden it'll come back on you, and they have kind of a working spreadsheet, age, where you were bit, what kind of dog, what the conditions were. They say this is what we're going to pay, and stuff like that can get kind of dragged out because now you have multiple layers, all sorts of different parties involved, and a lot of shit to argue with.
My son set the all-time record on his birthday. He was going to Regis, so we drove 2 cars to Regis, took him to the DMV to get his license, and left his new car. It wasn't new; it was an old. On the way home from school, he got into an accident. So he had his license for 12 minutes. So it was he and it was another kid in his class were changing lanes, and they both bumped. So his mother calls up and said, "It's your fault." I said, it probably was both of their fault. I said, if you make a claim to your insurance company with your kid who is 16 years old, your insurance is going to go through the skin.
You're slightly in the fire.
Pay for the damage. We'll pay for the damage.
I heard music. I thought it was a
What?
That's what it sounded like.
What was that?
Well, that's like parking lots. Every
Here you go. All right, we're back. John Fuller here on the Troubleshooter Network. We are looking at some open lines here, and so we are here to help you. If you have any issues that we can chime in on, if you've been scammed, if you've been ripped off, if you have challenges with contractors, issues with your vehicles, problems with your landlord, anything along those lines, and particularly If you happen to have been in an accident and you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer those questions. That is my specialty. I've been a personal injury attorney in Denver for the last 23 or so years, and we are here to help. The phone number is 303-713-8255. In the studio with me today are Deputies Dimitri and Doc, always ready at the standby for your issues, and Dan Mahoney. Dan's with the Insurance Group of Denver, and we're here having a lively discussion about insurance coverages and what to and not to do and that kind of stuff. And so if you have questions about your own coverage, absolutely pick up the phone and call us. Grab your deck sheet if you want to run some numbers by us and see if we think that you're appropriately insured or anything along those lines. Those calls are always welcome. If you have horror stories about a claim that's gone wrong with you or that some example of a lesson that you learned along the way regarding coverage and stuff, by all means give us a call. Those are super helpful for everybody else in the what not to do category. So we're here for you. Give us a call. So going into the break, I mentioned that my two favorite subjects were MedPay and uninsured motorist coverage. And I want to talk about MedPay. And a lot of people don't know really the genesis of MedPay, where it came from. But they do remember that a number of years ago we had something called no fault in Colorado. And under no fault, if you got in an accident, it didn't matter whose fault it was. My insurance company would pay for my meds and yours would pay for yours. And so we literally had this regime or this setup in Colorado to where we didn't really go to our own primary care doctors. We didn't really, use our traditional medical providers, because they weren't really participating in auto crashes. They weren't on the list, so to speak. And so we had all these like injury people and chiropractors and stuff that were all experts in treating, auto crashes. And the insurance companies, of course, perceived that every trip to the chiropractor was a waste of money, and they thought that the system was being abused, and so they put it on the ballot and promised the people in Colorado that they would save bukus on their insurance premiums. And so Colorado voted out the no fault, and they voted in the system that we have. And so immediately the after effects of that law change became known, which was that now we had no mechanism to get medical bills paid that were incurred immediately following an accident because the at-fault carriers refuse to pay. They represent their insureds, and they're never going to reduce the amount of policy coverage that they have without securing a release in advance. And so they had the ability to sit back and wait for months and months and never pay any of those bills. And we had people that would immediately get a bill from the ambulance and immediately get a bill from the ER. And there was no mechanism to get that paid. And so the solution to that, and I should probably also add, our hospitals weren't getting paid either. And so they were kind of knocking on the door of the legislature saying, we have a problem here, people. You've outlawed this whole mechanism that we had to get paid, and now we're being asked to wait months and months to get paid for this ER visit that we had to treat the party for. We can't turn them away. And so what are we to do? And so their answer to that was medical payments coverage.
Right.
And we went through a number of gyrations. Initially, it was only $1,000, and it was gonna save the day, as if that would pay for an ambulance ride or any real part of an ER visit. But that's what the dollar amount was. And we've kind of gravitated up to where it is today, and the required minimal amount of MedPay is $5,000. And so it's this crazy thing where we have a mandatory coverage, but you can opt out. But you can waive it.
Well, and John, not only that, but the MedPay, in my case, and here are the declarations that I'm going to ask Dan to go over, review for me. The maximum is only $25,000. I wanted a lot more than that, but no insurance company would sell me more than $25,000 in MedPay.
Yeah,
what the hell is that going to pay for?
And not many companies will sell 25, and I've only seen a couple that will sell 100. And it just varies. That's their, really, insurance companies hate medical payments coverage because it's a coverage that's not dependent upon fault.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can't really, traditionally their evaluations of risk are evaluating your likelihood to get in an accident, and we can actuarially determine what our risk level is. But we were talking off the air. If you're carrying 6 kids to a volleyball tournament and you get in an accident, MedPay is per person. So they could have, in your case, you've got 25. That could be $150,000 of medical bills that they have to pay right out of the gates, that they never get paid back, that it's not dependent in any way on fault. And so they don't get to subrogate. It's terrible coverage from the perspective of an insurance company, but it's fantastic coverage from the perspective of the insured.
Well, I partly disagree with that because it's only $25,000 maximum.
Well, listen,
that's not going to pay for my trip to the hospital.
It's going to pay for a good chunk of it. And if you have private health insurance, which you should, it's going to come into play at that point. We'll talk about this more right after the break. We'll be right back.
Yeah, my mom and dad got rear-ended, and my mom called me, asked what to do, and I was like, well, here, let me talk to Dad. Puts Dad on the phone. My dad's talking gibberish. I'm like, he's got a concussion. I'm like,
oh, shit.
Get to the hospital. I'm like, get out of there. Go to the hospital, get him checked out. He's there for the day. They send him home. Within a week, there was a lien put on my parents' house.
Wait, what?
No way.
A lien? By whom?
Or some from Swedish. There was
not on their house, there wasn't.
There was something that they did financially.
Maybe on their case. They may have filed a Secretary of State's lien.
Because my brother-in-law is an attorney, and he went and corrected their whatever it was that they did. I was pretty shocked.
There's no mechanism for them to file a lien on a house. Now,
it,
maybe it's in a different state. I don't know. But here, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
But they can file a lien with the Secretary of State's office. And what they're doing is anticipating that there'll be somebody like me out there
waiting to
pursuing a case, and they're trying to get paid. But even that's not legal anymore. We put the kibosh on that legislatively because they were just cheating,
Right.
And there's so many more parts to that. But
well, how about this? Going back to the guy that you were using as an example. So, if he voluntarily buys bad coverage, now there's a financial judgment against him. So, if he's older and when he passes, is his estate then liable to pay that judgment?
Yeah.
So now his children, who would have sold $1 million house, may now only be getting $700,000.
Changes the structure of your estate quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah, it's a mess. I mean, you think about healthcare, and Doc can attest to this, but I mean, what was your average recovery from a health insurance? 35 cents on the dollar, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I would say 90% of my billing was through insurance.
Right.
So I had to accept whatever, didn't matter what my bills were. I had to accept what we agreed to. Yeah.
But I mean, typically that comes in around 35 cents on the dollar or so. But the hospitals were filing their liens at 100 cents on the dollar for their medical services. So they never, ever billed 100 cents on the dollar with the anticipation of getting paid that. And so it came off as just dirty pool, and that's what kind of inspired the legislature to say, bullshit, we're not going to have you guys. Because why bill anybody? Why just sit back and wait? Fuck, if we got to wait, let's wait and get 100 cents on the dollar, or at least, So that was just, that was quashed within a couple of years of that really becoming.
I think MedPay also came on board before they dropped some of the penalties for medical debt.
Well, MedPay's actually been on board for over 20 years now.
Right.
I mean, it was like...
Which also helped in that situation.
Yeah, for sure. When MedPay first came out, they tried to make it subrogable, but it was only $1,000, and you're like,
why are you going to?
Just why? And they eventually made that non-subrogable, which was cool. But I tell you, Dimitri, you're one in a million. I mean, we rarely Rarely.
You know, it's so cheap.
So, but people don't anticipate. I mean,
it's that ancillary cost
Yeah, it's
of
like-
damage, ancillary cost of care.
You know, my insurance guy said I can like fall out of my car, sustain injuries, and it'll be covered by MidPay.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to
don't
be
fall
an-
walking to your car. That won't be.
Oh no, I'll crawl back into
Yeah,
my
and
car
then fall out.
lay with one leg in the seat.
You wanna make
When
sure
the
you
ambulance
And
comes
turn your
over.
dash cam on.
Tell somebody to come take a picture of it real
Yeah.
quick. You know?
And I said, well, what if I'm working on my car and drop the alternator on my foot? He goes, that's what.
Maybe homeowners. Maybe. I don't know.
He said, I don't know, but I'd submit a claim.
Yeah, you still try it. Yeah.
Run it up the flagpole.
But he said I could fall out of my car, parked car, like trip while getting out or in. And I said, max it.
I had a client. It was a pretty public case. He's riding his bike, Lookout Mountain. Kid buys a brand new Mustang, no insurance, no plates, no nothing. Fishtails hits him, throws him over the edge. Everybody thought he was going to die. He spends 2 months in Craig, comes out of it.
No shit.
He actually
$1 million in meds.
makes this way better. They have no idea who did it, nothing there. This is a couple that I convinced at least to buy 100, 300, 100. And I saw the news story and I called them right away. I'm like, you know, you have 100,000 sitting there plus your med pay. I'm like, you need to call your adjuster and get that.
And he got a check?
Yeah.
How long did it take?
Oh, that one was quick. That was good.
That was like, who do we make it out to?
Yeah, well, because and if they screw around with that, that's when you come into bad faith. So that's when Frank Gaze are saying, I got $7 million because, you know.
Oh, those
dog
are
ran
bad
out,
faith multiplied?
Those are usually bad faith when you get the big
Those
ones.
are usually uninsured cases where he took it to trial for the fun of it and got a judgment, but is never going to.
Probably a default judgment. So some of those are just worthless judgments that you hear about?
You got to be really careful about the words that they use when you hear those ads. It's like, my attorney took it to court and we got a $7 million judgment. That is not the same as getting paid a $7 million.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about it because who the hell would advertise a worthless judgment? But I can
People
see.
don't know the difference.
Yeah.
They're like, well, Frank, I get people telling me that shit. You know, well, what do you mean? You're only getting $115,000. Frank Gaze are doing $200,000.
Well, what's interesting, it's the uninsured guy and the minimally insured guys are the ones who hire him to go after the other guy.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't good enough for them to buy, but they want someone else to buy.
Exactly.
It's the personal injury lotto. I was in Vegas. It drives me crazy. I saw this last time. I hate Vegas, but I seem to go there for stuff. But I saw a billboard last time. It was still there that says hurtinahotelroom.com. And it was a personal injury attorney.
God, that's awesome.
I'm like, really? I'm like,
That's awesome.
Like, so I'm going to get hammered and trip over an ottoman, and now I'm going to sue Caesar.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, the cost to litigate.
That's
awesome.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I was shocked by that. I'm like, wow. But think about it. I mean, you know, if you do have some substantial injury, I mean, the cost to litigate it is. My brother-in-law, his father was an attorney. His whole career, he just sued State Farm.
Whole career what?
He just sued State Farm for people. I mean, he had over by Southland, he had a
good work.
3-4 person.
Were they just an easy target, or did he develop a specialty in their defense?
Well, because they want to fight everything. State Farm fights everything, and they want to litigate everything. So he would take the stuff that really, you could go somewhere with that you had a grip on.
Right.
I had a gal that worked for me, came in, had horrible coverage, got her to see the light, had her write a really good policy, whole deal. She doesn't tell me that she lapsed her coverage.
Ripped off, bad news. You need advice so you don't have to lose. We'll come running just as fast as we can. Troubleshooter's gonna help the common man.
This is the Troubleshooter Show. Now, Tom Martino.
Hey, good afternoon. This is John Fuller on the Referral Network. We are here halfway through today. We are here to solve problems, take complaints, answer questions. We're here to help you. If you've been scammed, if you've been ripped off, if there's something that we can help you on, give us a call. The number here in the studio is 713-8255. That's 303-713-8255. You can also reach us at help@troubleshooter.com. We have Deputy Doc and Deputy Dimitri, and we have Dan Mahoney in the house today. Dan is an insurance agent that owns Insurance Group of Denver, which is an independent agency, and we're kind of talking through the different issues. We just tiptoed into MedPay, and I was talking about the history of MedPay. If you're new to the show this afternoon, we're kind of discussing all things auto insurance and limits and types of coverage and stuff like that. If you have issues that relate to claims on your auto insurance, or you have questions about the level of coverage that you have, give us a call, because we're here to help work through those issues. And so I'd far prefer to discuss with you about whether the coverage is there to do what you think it's there to do before something happens rather than after. And so we had just tiptoed into MedPay. MedPay is a coverage that's on your policy. It's designed to help you pay some of the out-of-pocket expenses that you immediately incur after an accident. And I can't tell you the number of times when I have a client that says, well, I wasn't at fault. The hospital's just going to bill the other insurance company. And they truly think that that's what's going to happen. But the reality is that the other insurance company is never going to pay those bills as they're being incurred. Those bills are in your name. They're your responsibility. If you ignore them and don't do anything with them, it'll be you that gets a collection company calling you, and it'll be your credit that ends up getting dinged in the process. So it's very important that you understand what coverages are there to provide what payment, and MedPay is kind of the first line of defense. So I wanted to turn it over to Dan and just talk about it. It's a mandatory coverage, but explain the waiver. How does that work, Dan, in your practice?
So it's a mandatory coverage that you can opt out of. That's the genius.
Well, why would anybody ever do that?
So when I hear people say, I'm going to opt out of that, they say, I'm going to opt out because I have amazing health insurance, or I'm in the military, or I'm retired and I have Medicare.
Well, I haven't had an accident in 32 years.
And you're impervious. Yeah, right. That's the other one too. And, everyone's going to get in an accident, and statistics are out there to, what is it, like every 7 years over $1,000. The problem with that is 7 years going to be this afternoon, or is it going to be in 7 years?
Right.
And it's going to happen. So you have to be prepared for it.
Well, how do you rebut that argument that I have great insurance, or I have Medicare? I hear that all the time. I have Medicare, and I have TRICARE for life, and I'm totally covered. There's never going to be a medical bill that I have to pay. Why the hell should I have MedPay?
When I talk through this, first thing is that really MedPay, I kind of look at it as it's buying you time. So it's giving you some money at the time of the accident that you can apply towards any early incurred cost or any ancillary care that you want to go out that's going to make you feel better. So that's the first part of it. It's going to make it a lot easier. It's going to streamline the process. Second, especially if you're younger, is that if you have kids and you're driving carpool and you have an accident and you have 5 kids all tucked up in your super 4-wheel drive wagon, if one of those kids doesn't have health insurance or doesn't have parents don't have a good policy, all of a sudden you're going to be responsible for those costs. And in this case now, with the MedPay on there, they can actually dip into those funds, and same thing, it helps assist them along the process to get to the treatment that they need until someone takes responsibility and starts paying the bills.
I love when people tell me how great their Medicare is, and it's just they're just misinformed. They just don't understand. I mean, Medicare doesn't cover everything, number one, so you're not truly impervious to any, bill coming your way following an accident. But secondly, it's like, do you only drive by yourself forever and ever, and you never have anybody else in your car? I mean, Do you and the neighbors never go out to dinner? Do you never take your grandkids to the park or back over to your kid's house? Or, I mean, it's everybody else that you buy all this insurance for. You know, if I have a super, gazillion dollar UM policy and I'm buying that because I don't want to have no insurance available if I got killed, it's not me that's going to get that money. It's my family. And so I just look at insurance as a necessary evil. It's a tool that we have to have, but you darn sure ought to have it built in a way that's going to benefit the people that are in your family that are actually going to be the recipient of those funds. Right. And I think MedPay is one of those coverages. It's perfect for copays and deductibles and stuff like that are the immediate out-of-pocket expenses.
And almost anybody you talk to now, it used to be optional back when healthcare started getting expensive, but it's pretty standard now. Most policies have a $5,000 deductible right out the door.
Yeah, they do. And we're able to frequently use the MedPay to at least help knock out that out-of-pocket minimum. It maybe doesn't cover every single bit of it, but it goes a long way. And so if you're one of those people that are like, okay, do I pay the deductible or do I pay my rent? That MedPay is the difference in being immediately in financial crisis, especially if somebody has to take a week or two off work, and being able to kind of maintain the status quo and pay your rent and keep things flowing forward. Dimitri, you had a question.
Yeah, Dan, I've always been a big advocate of proper insurance in case I incur a liability while driving or doing something else. But a fundamental shift in my thinking started occurring back when I'd say 6 or 7 months ago, and I started seeing John quite a bit over here in the course of our participation in the show. And one thing that he impressed upon me is the importance of look at this as buying insurance for yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Because of what he just said, the both cars on your side are statistically uninsured or severely underinsured. So that has been the shift in the reason that I want to buy and do buy auto insurance. So here's my declarations page. And in the context of what I just said, can you please review, and this is a State Farm policy, and can you please review this? By the way, these are all limits. They won't sell me any more insurance. So not only would I ask you to review my limits, but can you also bring into that discussion what you said about an umbrella policy amplifying these limits? If so, to what extent would each of these line items be amplified by $1 million policy? And also, is that $1 million actually divided into small subsections per each of these line items, or can I expect $1 million amplification to each of these line items within the context of $1 million total limit? Does that kind of make sense?
You're going to have to put that question in writing.
I'm still filling in the spreadsheet to make sure I answer all that.
We're going to go to a break here right now. We'll address Dimitri's declaration sheet, and we'll sum it up in a much more concise question right after this break. Hang on, guys. Could you elaborate on what I should have for dinner before that dinner?
It's like my wife is here with me.
But now you can talk about almost anything you want.
And, should I actually eat sushi before I get the blood test for my life insurance? And,
and if there's a high mercury level in there,
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, MedPay too. You can use it for final expenses.
And now the second part of my question.
I've flown bodies home with MedPay before.
On your computer, look up the word brevity.
Okay.
Yeah, it's bliss. That means good.
So, and you guys can be my collective memory if I'm wrong, but when I got into the business almost 20-some years ago, I believe it was City and County of Denver decided they were going to crack down on uninsured drivers and people driving without valid licenses and registrations out of date. Thing. So if I remember correctly, they had this kind of zero tolerance approach. So they pulled you over, you're not able to prove it, boom, they towed the car. So this was their way to put that carrot out in front of people that says, you got to do the right stuff, you got to register, you got to have insurance, the whole thing. So the city, after 60 to 90 days, had to give up on the program because they had so many cars impounded and people weren't coming to get them that it was starting to cost them millions of dollars just to maintain the storage of the vehicles.
Yeah. I didn't hear that, but that doesn't surprise me. Yeah. But they definitely don't do that now. I mean,
no, they couldn't afford to do it.
It's just crazy. I mean, they give you a ticket, and listen. Sometimes it goes beyond that. Like, in a bad crash, we frequently get the accident report and see that the other guy was charged with no proof of insurance. Right? Happens a lot.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean there's no insurance. It
just
means that guy got drug out of the car and put in an ambulance, and the cop doesn't have the ability to go digging around in the glove box to find the card.
Right.
So we frequently find out, yes, there is insurance and stuff, but the no proof just gets the guy to go to court and have to prove that he has it. So sometimes for us, that's the direction that we end up going is, prove up you've got the court, or we're going to have. Or prove up you have the insurance, or we're going to have the mother of all restitution claims.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I got a ticket for no proof of insurance that I intentionally got, and I didn't even have to go to the courtroom. I just in room 135. I just showed them, and they said, "Okay, case dismissed right here at the glass window."
Right. And they will. By law, they have to.
Yeah, I had a pistol in the glove box. And so when the cop asked for my proof of insurance, I said,
Demetrius like, this is all the insurance I need.
I got 9
Texas insurance.
You want insurance? I got insurance for you.
I just didn't want him to shit his pants and murder me, if I opened that glove box. And I said, I don't have any proof of insurance with me. Yeah. And I said, I'll take a ticket. And he wrote a ticket. And
you don't just disclose it.
I learned that lesson the hard way.
Oh, really?
And I can tell you about that too.
I thought
a cop asked me previous stop. I got pulled over for allegedly expired license plate, and a cop asked me, do you have any weapons in the car? And I said, yeah, there's a pistol in the center console. And by the way, neither of these were illegal, right? I'm fully entitled to have firearms in my car. And he's like, he turned fucking white. He shit his pants. And he said, well, I need you to step out of the car, stand over there. Our policy requires me to call for backup officers. And we sat there for literally half an hour, which goes way beyond the reasonable amount of time they're allowed to pull you over. And so other cops arrive, and one of them says, you don't mind if I go get your pistol, just to kind of secure it for the duration of this stop. And by then, I was like, I need to go home. I'm hungry. I was like, go take the fucking gun. So they took the gun. I got my ticket for allegedly expired license plates. A fucking hour later, the cop comes over. He says, hey, if you want to pop the back of your SUV, I'll put your gun in there. And so he puts it in there. They drove off. I go to open up to go get my gun so I can remain armed. The piece of shit disassembled it into 7 parts, took every round out of the magazine, and left it in a little pile, rolling around in the back of my 4Runner. I was like, fuck it. I mean, I'll never tell a cop I have a gun in my car.
Right.
And the duration of that stop was totally illegal. I just didn't know it at the time. Right? Because they're only allowed to detain you for as long as it takes to write a ticket. If their policy is to wait for backup, that's their policy. That's not the law, right? It does not allow them to keep me there any longer than, typically 20, 30 minutes.
But if you didn't have a gun, then it would be against the policy. But if you have a gun and you declare it, then the traffic stop doesn't end until they have satisfied the fact that the gun is not stolen, it's registered to you. So the extension of the traffic stop was legal in that instance. If you
they have no, I understand what you're saying.
Studios. Trajan Wealth, your trusted local fiduciary advisors. TrajanWealth.com.
All right. Good afternoon. John Fuller back with the Troubleshooter Network. We are trucking along here. We are here to help you solve your problems. We've got a couple open lines here. We'd appreciate your call. The number is 303-713-8255. We are here to help you, not just with insurance issues. That is a rare opportunity to have two, people that are kind of on opposite ends of the insurance world, one selling and one really using what people have bought to its intended use when we have accidents and we have people that are injured and making claims and stuff. And so, many times I have cases where I wish the people had bought new, or not new, but different or more insurance or better insurance coverage. And then we're talking here with Dan Mahoney, who's on the other end of it as the person that's frequently recommending to people that they buy different coverage and probably many times is perceived as, doom and gloom and talking about risk of things that never happen, but they do. And
I make John's dreams come true.
Absolutely. And we like Dan, So, we've covered a lot of subjects today. We'd like to hear from you. So if you have, if you're one of these that says, I have great coverage and I don't need fill in the blank. I don't need uninsured. I don't need med pay. I don't need whatever the case may be. I want to hear from you because not to belittle you or anything, but just it's a valid, perspective that many people have. And we're here to talk about the effects that decision has in the event that something happens. And the worst thing in the world is to think you have great coverage and then find out that you really don't, or that you didn't get a particular coverage because you thought it did something else. Or, in my practice, I've had so many people come in and sit in my conference room after their loved one is injured and in the hospital or something, and they're like, God, I got great insurance. And it's like, I got an umbrella. I got $1 million umbrella. I got coverage like crazy. And you have to tell that person, look, that $1 million is liability only. And it's great if you happen to cause the accident, but it does zero for you if you weren't at fault and the other person doesn't have great insurance. And so, that conversation I personally had with clients, I bet 50 times over the years that I've been doing this. And it's a very real thing. And it's never, it's just never a case where people say, man, I wish I didn't buy all that insurance because it's, what a waste that was. It's always the case that more is better and it helps people get made whole a lot better. So we were talking about med pay and some other stuff, and Dimitri brought up a 94-part question with 16 subparts and everything else. But it kind of boiled down to having Dan look over and discuss the limits that Dimitri had on his own personal insurance policy, his real live declarations page, and to not only talk about the level of coverages that he has, but whether or not his coverage profile, if you would be enhanced, or what would the addition of an umbrella do to your overall analysis? So with that, I'm going to kind of turn it over and let you analyze all 94 parts of Dimitri's question.
Sure. It's like a college thesis.
And good luck with that.
So real quick, let's put a couple of definitions around these things. So a declaration page is a $10 word for basically your policy summary. Usually it's 1 to 2 pages. Anything that actually has a dollar amount that you're paying, that's usually your declaration page. So don't be afraid of it when you go to look at it, because I know that your policy is like 90-some pages. You're just looking for the ones that actually have dollar amounts that are charging you. That's going to give you your summary. Second thing to keep in mind, too, with insurance. Insurance, John just said the word make you whole. Insurance is really a transfer of risk. That's all it is. It's a transfer of risk. So if it's your house, your car, something you have a value, you go to an insurance company, you say, hey, I've got this thing, it's worth something, I want protection in case something happens. They say, okay, for this amount of money, we'll protect that, we'll take that risk. So we're transferring risk. So as we look at Dimitri's deck pages, again, this is just the summary, and this is a carrier I don't work with, so I don't know all the ins and outs, but I can talk generally about where he's at and what we can do with this. So we start off first with bodily injury limits. This is the one that usually is listed by number/number/number. In this case, 250,000, 500,000, 100,000. So what's that saying is that outbound, I have $250,000 of coverage towards anyone that I injure or cause issues for in an accident. I have $500,000 aggregate. Aggregate just means it's a pool. You can use it any way you want. You just cannot exceed $250,000 per person or $500,000 total for the accident.
Dan, what does the word outbound mean?
I use outbound to oversimplify it, but basically, if you cause an accident, you're at fault. You injure someone else. This is where it's coming from.
So it's money that's available to help pay for damages that you caused in a potential accident.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly. It's for that party that you damaged.
Gotcha.
So the 250, 500, again, 500 is combined, or I'm sorry, it's an aggregate. So if you have 5 people at 100,000 each, you're great. 2 people at 250 each, you're great in this scenario. Now, you got 10 people in there and they all have 100,000, your policy is just not going to stack up. Next line after that you're going into is the property damage, which is $100,000. I just saw a report the other day that said average new car is something like $49,800. So if you have state minimums, you already missed the boat. I mean, if you total someone's car, you're totally in bad shape there.
Is that liability coverage also part of the property damage coverage?
Yeah, that last number is going to be the property damage portion of it.
Okay, so the liability amount is intact without any regard to what's done on property. There's no way you could exhaust the liability by taking care of a really expensive property claim.
Correct. It's a separate line item, separate coverage that's on there. Rolling through the policy, you also have $25,000 in MedPay. Typically, that's about the most I'll see a carrier offer. We just got done talking about that. MedPay really helps kind of close that gap between your first dollar of care until your other care kicks in, whether it's Medicare or your awesome insurance policy or whatever it is that you have in your back pocket that you think is going to jump in. Also helps out if you have passengers in your car who may not have insurance or good insurance. Deductibles are deductibles. Again, I'm going to simplify this. Comprehensive, basically, I just say it's like an act of God. Something happens to your car, a tree falls on it, hail hits it. This is where comprehensive is. You pay a certain amount, they pay the rest. Collision, again, to oversimplify it, I say this is what comes to play if you're at fault and you hit something else. Now, the collision, if I damage your car, Dimitri, in an accident, I'm at fault. My coverage actually starts at your very first penny. So there's no deductible experience for me or you. My coverage automatically starts at the first penny. Now, my deductible for my car that I hit you with, now in this case, I have to pay the first $1,000. They're going to pay the rest.
So let me interrupt right there. We're going to go to a real quick break, and we're going to come back and get a little deeper into. We've actually got a caller with a question on insurance that we'll take right after this break, and then we're going to get into some of the more nuanced coverage like uninsured motorist and how that differs from liability coverage. Okay, we'll be right back.
Time for potty?
Yep, run. Do it.
Do it.
Insurance term. Yeah, did this thing about buying insurance for myself, that has been such a valuable insight.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it. I did not think about it. I just worried about protecting the equity of my home. You know,
Kind of all makes sense when you look at it from that perspective.
cradle gold bars under the bed, all that stuff.
We would expect nothing less, Dimitri.
My God.
Your cardboard business, right? One of the guys, I don't know how long you've been in Denver, but we had a libertarian Senate candidate named Rick Stanley many years ago, and he was a dude that would go to his political rallies with the sidearm, open carry, and it was a different time, but there was mixed appreciation of that at his rallies, as you can imagine.
Sure, yeah.
And that dude, eventually, he was kind of right there at the line of, drifting over into the uber conspiratorial side of the world and stuff, and almost like the posse comitatus kind of stuff. And,
Oh, wow. Interesting. That's deep.
Just almost, we're like right there, and actually ended up getting arrested for something. It may have been unlawful possession of a firearm or something. But it started him down the path of going through the criminal, justice system and stuff. And he thought it would be a brilliant idea to write a letter to the judge. And and the judge perceived it as a threat, and that led to additional felony charges. And eventually Rick ended up going to prison for a number of years. But the whole point of it was that Rick's currency was gold bars, so he had to pay his legal bills. Now, I worked for a different firm at that time, so it wasn't like he was paying me, but I remember getting these gold bars and having to go figure out what they were worth and spot gold prices and all that kind of stuff. Cool. And I'm just like, never in my wildest dreams did I think some guy would be handing me gold bars for a criminal case. When I got out of law school, this has been 25 years ago. But no, I did. It wasn't my firm at the time. The boss probably still has them. I'm sure he didn't. Sure, he didn't put them in the bank. But
right off the hours. As
yeah. That never even crossed his mind to put that gold in the bank, But
did this guy own a franchise of a fastener store called Fastenal? I know his daughter.
Well, it was his name, Stanley Fasteners, for a long time. Yeah.
I've known his daughter for the last 15 years.
She probably took over right after he went to prison.
Oh, no, she had nothing to do with it.
Oh, no?
So she even has a different
I think it may even still be around, but...
Oh, yes. Stanley Fastener's still around. I asked her, and she says, yeah, that was my dad's company, but we're not close. We don't talk to each other. She's hotter than shit.
His wife was smoking.
Yeah, her mom's hot, too.
Yeah.
But, small world, huh, Jim?
I know.
Small world.
I get around, man.
Yeah. They're related. So, on her mother's side, that's the family that's the Vandermeer family.
Oh, really?
Johnny Vandermeer.
I think I might have heard that. I mean, this has been so long ago, Dimitri. I don't remember any of the details. I just
the important one. You remember.
Important one, but
stack of gold. It's in our little private office. I'll show you.
Oh, we got 3 calls here on insurance. Fantastic.
Yep. Well, that's what you want. You want questions for the guests.
Absolutely.
I got pulled over the other day coming home from the mountains.
Yeah.
Right by, you know what Denver Country Club is? Mm-hmm. That long stretch is a straightaway. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Spear or whatever.
What?
On Spear there?
Yeah. The cop pulls me over, and I think my friend told me, as soon as you turn off the car, turn on the dome lights, roll the window down, and put your hands on the steering wheel. The guy was sorry. I said, you're going a little fast. I don't know, so it's 1 o'clock in the morning, the street's empty. He said, have your license. He gave it to him. He came back, said, look, the license is clean. We're mainly concerned about drunk drivers. You haven't been drinking. Just slow down a little bit. Which I thought was really nice of him.
Yeah. At that hour, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
You're right in the zone of the drunk time, It's like I frequently take Ubers at 4 o'clock in the morning going to the airport and stuff, And those guys are always funny. Either they're just finishing up the drunk shift or they're just coming on early. And some won't work, before like 4 a.m. That's kind of the line where they either work through the drunk let-out time up until everybody's home or...
Call Excel Roofing, 303-761-6400.
Denver's talk station. Online at khout.com.
Good afternoon. John Fuller here on the Troubleshooter Network. We are talking about all things insurance this afternoon. With me as a guest here in the studio is Dan Mahoney. He is the principal of the Insurance Group of Denver. You can contact Dan at 720-436-1990 after the show with all of your insurance needs, but he's here in the studio and we're answering questions. We're going to go to the lines here. If you have a question about insurance, if you have a question about coverage, if you have a question about claims, property, accidents, anything to do with insurance, by all means, pick up the phone. The number is 713-8255. That's area code 303-713-8255. We're going to go right to the phones here. Tim, you have a question about auto insurance. What's going on, Tim?
Yeah, guys, thanks for taking my call. A very informative show. So I need your take on my situation. 2009, I buy a new vehicle. I finance it, full coverage on it. It's been paid off for years.
Okay.
The value of it right now with age and mileage is probably less than $2,000. I'm still carrying full coverage on it. What should I do? Should I just go to a straight liability with maybe an umbrella policy, or what would be your suggestion?
Okay. Well, Dan, I'll let you address that, and then
when we're talking about liability only, I always ask people what their pain threshold is. Basically, how much money can you afford to lose if someone came and stole that car in the middle of the night, caught on fire, tree fell on it, etc. So if the value of that vehicle is within your pain threshold and you don't mind self-insuring, if you will, for that, I don't think there's a problem at all. One of the things, though, you should consider is that ask your agent to give you a look at the cost of both sides, because sometimes older cars also are really inexpensive to insure. So if you're only saving $80, I think I would rather pay the $80 than hold on to the $3,000, because you don't know when somebody's going to steal your car or something happens.
Tim, do you have other cars on this same policy?
No, I've just got the one vehicle, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I drive very little. I'm a old guy, so I don't get out on the road much.
Yeah, if you're a guy who saves money, you got plenty of money in the bank, you're willing to take the risk, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, but the main thing is maybe compare the cost between going straight liability with umbrellas versus what I'm paying now for.
You might be surprised at the difference, how low the cost is.
Yeah, I was going to say it may just be so insignificant that you'd want to just keep the full coverage. The real important thing, which I'm glad that you're doing, is that your liability limits are enough to even qualify to get an umbrella policy, which for most carriers I think is usually around the $250 mark. And then you have that umbrella above. So you're not going to be in that position like the listener that we were talking about earlier, where, God forbid something happens. It's, the value of the vehicle is nothing compared to the overall potential issue that you could have, following that accident. So
you may be on the hook for, in other words.
That's exactly right, sir. You're exactly right. Hey, thanks for the question, Tim. Appreciate the call today.
Guys, appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Appreciate it. We're going to go next to Oscar, who has another question about auto insurance. What's going on, Oscar?
Oh, hi, John. Dan, this is similar to the gentleman you just talked to. I have a 2003 Lexus SC430. It's sort of a unique Lexus. However, I have a full coverage on it now with $1,000 deduct. I have another car, similar, a Pain. I pay about $2,800 a year for both of them. The boxes,
Hey, Oscar, we're going to put you on hold for just a second. We're having a hard time understanding you. The phone is very garbled. If you can try to stand on one leg or go to a different part of the house, we'll come right back to you in just a second. We just can't hear what the issue is. So we're going to go next to Tom, who has a question about motorcycle insurance. And Oscar, we'll try to come right back to you in just a minute. Tom, what's going on?
Hey, gentlemen, great show. Really appreciate your information.
Thank you.
I rode Harleys, still do, but not as much, in the 90s. And insurance back then, I had supplement to my employer, which was Aflac, and also PIP to the insurer. Then I got ran over in 2000, and those really helped contribute to my medical bills. I don't know if PIP or AFLAC are still in the picture for motorcycle riders.
PIP is gone.
Well,
It's all
PIP,
tort now.
PIP was part of that no fault that we voted out about 20 years ago. That was called personal injury protection. That's what PIP stood for. And that was the mechanism on your policy. And it was particularly, really unique on auto policies or on motorcycle policies because many of the carriers wouldn't offer PIP for motorcycle riders. So there were a couple out there that did, and you were lucky enough to have one. But we don't have PIP anymore. Now, was your AFLAC, that's like a supplemental disability type policy, isn't it?
That was through my employer.
Okay.
I work at a hospital, so I heard lots of stories, doctors hanging out in the ER that they knew I ride, and they told me that's what I should get. Okay. And luckily I did, because I did end up getting hit by a drunk driver.
Gotcha. Cool. So what is your question today? Are you looking for what the right coverage is?
For riders, is there something they can do for, is it supplementary or equal to
Dan, what do you do with
your protection?
Yeah, the supplemental you would still buy through your provider or your employer. But this also kind of ties back to MedPay. So you can also, ramp up your MedPay to $25,000. It's not a duplicate of AFLAC. AFLAC goes a little bit further, but it will give you a lot more latitude in your care and treatment.
So what about using
specific to a motorcycle rider? Because when I went through my accident, Roy Romer had put a tort in the law, and with my settlement, the hospital ended up being able to take out how much I incurred while I was there out of my settlement.
So that's a little. They took out the amount of the claim for the supplemental on your settlement.
No, for the hospital bills that I incurred.
Yeah, so that's actually exactly how it works. So, and that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. When you incur bills as a result of an accident, those are actually your bills. They are your responsibility. There's no mechanism to just give them the name of the at-fault party and all of a sudden have them bill that guy because he caused the accident. They're still your bills. It's just that those bills constitute the damages that you have the right to go after the at-fault party for. And okay. A lot of people don't understand that. They think, and even hospitals kind of lead them to believe that, oh yeah, we'll just bill the at-fault, insurance company. Oh, that's Progressive. We'll send a bill to them. Those bills never get paid. And so a smarter way to happen or to handle your cases is just to understand that up front and know that the better way is to use every type of insurance that you have, be it medical payments coverage, be it your own private health insurance, be it Medicare, Medicaid, your AFLACs, every single thing that you have that covers you want to deploy that in order to get the personal financial impact of that accident down as low as possible for you. And then at the end of the day, we'll go after the at-fault driver for the totality of your damages. But those two are completely separate numbers. If you're able to get the out-of-pocket on your end down to next to nothing, that doesn't mean that your damages are any lower for the guy that caused all of the need for that medical treatment and all of those bills in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think I misspoke because I did get a settlement from the other driver.
Okay.
And the hospital took the money off the top of that settlement.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So it's like they double dipped. They got the insurance and they got my settlement money also.
Yeah, that can actually happen. And, the only benefit of that arrangement is if you use your private health insurance and it gives you the ability to reprice the medicals down to a lower contract amount, then the actual expense of that medical treatment to you is quite a bit lower than what the expense is going to be to the at-fault guy that we're going after for your damages.
Okay, so is that still a law that they can come after a motorcycle if it's they get a settlement for their accident injury?
It's not just
still get money.
Yeah, it's not just motorcycles there, Tom. It's everybody. Those health insurance companies have a right to get repaid whenever they use that. So that's a great topic. We're going to come back and visit about subrogation and how that actually works. We'll touch on that in just a moment. We got to run to a break right now. Tom, thank you for the call. We've got Oscar still waiting. Hopefully he's got his phone worked out, and Dave on the line we'll get to in just a moment. Hang tight, guys.
I always get people on motorcycles going.
Say again?
People on motorcycles like, why do I need that much liability? I'm just riding a bike. Like, what if you cause an accident? It's a school bus full of kids. Like, come on, you're still.
Yeah. My concern is that, dude, there's nothing that can happen to you on a bike that isn't going to cost more than $25,000.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's just nothing.
Yeah.
So.
I'm not a big life insurance shop, but.
Dragon, how much time do I have?
Your agent did a good job right now.
Well,
I don't see that.
I just said max me out on anything, so she just maxed it out. I don't think she did a really great job. She's kind of a big flake. But I don't care about that because I don't depend on her for anything other than my insurance application and getting it. Yeah, and she doesn't collect the money. It's all at State Farm itself.
I see deck pages all the time, and I'd say 10% are written well, and the rest are just garbage. They're just, and it's sad because, and the market's been so tough lately too that people are constantly shopping and they'll bounce somewhere else and they'll send us the deck pages and it's like, you had 250, 500, 100 on BI and you had it on uninsured, but they moved you to 2550 on uninsured. It's just a lot of stuff like that.
I don't have those line items.
Oh yeah, you do. They're down there.
So all I have is uninsured.
So go to that bodily injury limits at 250, 500.
So this is uninsured and this is underinsured? Is it the same? Is that the same thing? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's and either it's people don't know what the product is they're selling, or they're just trying to make a sale. Or
How much do you think she got paid initially, and then every time I renew every year?
Probably anywhere from 10 to 15%
each time.
Yeah, depending on. There's some characteristics of people that we write that a company may not like, and they'll give you less. Sometimes if you have a team driver, they'll give you less because they know you're more prone.
No, I mean, how much do you think she made in commission?
Oh yeah, 10
to 15%. That's it. That's not bad.
And State Farm is, those guys don't own their books of business, so
they don't.
They well, it depends on the contract, but most new contracts you don't own it. So a lot of these folks really, actually, I just hired a support person that came from State Farm, so I really got a good view into the back end. But the home and auto is just kind of the door to get in to talk to you about financial stuff. Really, the person, the person who's running that agency, the person whose name on it, State Farm has them under some pretty hard numbers what they have to produce. So they try to grind people out for. I mean, my shop, we'll just do term insurance. We don't screw around with anything else, but they'll come at you with annuities and variable life and even some financial stuff. And it's just I was at a company called Country Insurance, which became Country Financial, which was actually a spin out of Illinois Farm Bureau, which is where State Farm came from. Same kind of thing. It just, they'll let you keep taking the money on these, but you have to make your numbers on the others.
Or else they could yank your franchise. And if they yank your franchise, you lose that book of business. Holy shit!
A lot of the old timers I know, usually their kids are brokers, and so stuff they can't write, they move over, or stuff that they do like but want to preserve, they move over. So it's a different legal entity, and they're kind of shifting it over. So when they do retire, now their kids have a legacy agency that they can pick up.
So if she loses her franchise, what happens to the accounts? I mean, State Farm is not going to call me and say, we're your agent now. Are they going to just give it
they
to
could.
her?
Or they'll assign it to another broker or another agent, but that agent now is only going to get like 5%. They're not going to get the real money. So
It's not bad for fun money, though.
no, but I mean, if you look at the cost of staff and helping people and responding, sometimes you're the lowest guy on the pole to get talked to. So
That's disappointing.
yeah.
Dan, do you guys write stuff in different states?
Yeah, we've got about 10 different states, and with this hard market, though, now a lot of carriers are pulling those codes because they don't like the onesie-twosies, and we do it because we have a lot of high net worth clients, and we've got property everywhere. So we just follow them, and it kind of sucks. You know, you write a condo, and we've got a condo in Florida that's $36,000 to insure. It's a 2,000 square foot condo, but it's on the coast. So, you know, then they come in and start hacking that.
That's kind of the
big
situation that we're in. We've got a couple of properties in Florida that we go back and forth in that they're more than second homes. They're kind of like half-time homes. And so we've got the...
Yeah, I can't go number 2 anymore.
Down there, boats here, and, you know, it's just...
Well, you got to watch that in Florida, too, because there's a lot of... Actually, they're not even insurance companies. They're holding companies that are writing. They're not even a true insurance company.
Yeah, I know. It's a mess, but you've...
Four.
Here for the Troubleshooter Network. We are rapidly moving through the afternoon. We are talking about all things insurance today. Our guest in the studio is Dan Mahoney with the Insurance Group of Denver. Dan's an independent agent, so he's able to talk about, I don't know, how many lines do you guys write for? Like 30 different companies or?
Yeah, we probably have 8 to 10 what we consider as a standard market, Travelers, Hartford, Safeco, and then we have a whole nother set of back end, which are called excess and surplus or specialty carriers.
Right. So, I mean, the advantage of an independent agent versus somebody that is, you know, a single branded carrier. I mean, are you often able to really put together more, you know, competitive packages for your clients than those guys? Or who do you think let me put it differently. Who's your ideal client? Who do you want to see coming through your doors?
You know, auto and homeowner, someone who wants to do the right thing. Keep in mind, any income can be garnished.
Right.
Even if you don't have means that somebody can come after, you're still exposed. So we want people who want to engage with us, not just somebody who wants a price. Because if you just want a price, you're never going to get the right product, and you're always going to be unhappy with what you bought. And then everyone says insurance sucks and they hate it, and that's why. It's because you're not buying what you think you're buying.
Sure. No, that's absolutely a common sentiment. Dave, you've got a question on insurance. Let's see what we can do for you there, Dave. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. My question is, I drive a company car 100% of the time, both for personal and for business, and it's 100% paid for by the company.
Okay.
When I'm driving it on my personal time, your discussion has me wondering, like, how safe I am if someone is uninsured, you know. I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Yeah, if your company's commercial policy allows you for personal use, that coverage should extend over. An option that you can do is what they call a non-owned auto policy, which basically is structured like an auto policy, just no car there. They're actually very cheap to buy. It's also a great alternative for folks that live in downtown Denver where you don't have a car. You're riding scooters, you're taking Ubers, you're driving with friends.
Dan, or Dave, do you have any other cars that you insure in your household?
I have a motorcycle. So I have a motorcycle policy.
Okay. And
that's it. I don't own another car, no.
So the important thing, and what I was kind of looking for there, is that even when you're in that situation where the employer is providing you a vehicle and you're authorized to drive it both personally and for the business, is, you know, there are limits to what commercial policies have for their employees. And you'd be surprised, but a number of commercial policies don't really have uninsured motorist coverage. They just view that coverage as being redundant because they think, well, if my employee gets hurt, work comp is going to cover them. But they don't really think about the circumstance where the employee is not on the job, but is still driving that vehicle, where it would not be a comp-related coverage. And so I still think you need to be thinking about uninsured motorist coverage and, the type of things that will stack on top of your employer's coverage in the event that something happens and it turns out that they have less than just phenomenal coverage.
And a non-owned policy is a perfect.
A non-owned policy is a perfect way to do that. Even on your motorcycle policy, you may have the ability to add that additional coverage that's not just motorcycle dependent, because some carriers are a little weird about, MedPay and on motorcycle policies, and the law in Colorado allows them to do that. But on the non-owner's policy that Dan's talking about, you can get, creative for not a lot of money and really provide some extra coverage for you. Is that the kind of stuff you guys deal with?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Dan, if I'm driving my friend's car and I get into an accident, does his insurance or my insurance, assuming it's my fault, does his insurance or my insurance kick in to cover the claim?
Insurance follows the car. So whatever policy is on the car is the primary. Yeah. If there's not enough coverage or no coverage, then you're going to come in as the secondary.
Say that.
Dave, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Did that address your full question?
Well, because of you, I do have uninsured or underinsured motorist on my motorcycle policy. So you're saying might be able to buy an endorsement to get a non-owned auto policy?
Yeah, that's a separate policy. Yeah, you can certainly buy those.
Yeah, absolutely. Give Dan a call after the show. He'll take care of you. Thanks for the call. We're going to go to another quick break. We've got one more hour to go. Give us a call with all of your questions. Thank you.
Geez, being on the air for 3 hours, I guess I finally learned something about insurance.
Yeah.
It's taken me a while.
I'm glad you're here because it's cool to just. I love getting some questions from people, but I've been preaching this shit for years about dash cams and MedPay and don't waive it and get the extra and get on your umbrellas and stuff, which I still want to talk about umbrellas, but the general public just there's so many agents out there that are just they're not willing to risk losing the sale.
Right.
Enough to risk giving people honest advice. One of my only daughter, she played volleyball. One of the volleyball dads was a farmer's agent. And, old school, had his own agency, but branded, and that's just all he had ever done. His whole life was work with farmers. And, it's like, dude, would you ever sell a policy without MedPay? It's like all the time. Like, why the heck would you do that?
I insure insurance agents.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is. They don't even know what the hell they're talking about.
No, they don't. I have clients that are insurance employees all the time, and they're no better insured than anybody else. They don't know what the hell they're doing.
Well, Dimitri and I were just talking about the State Farm, that really what the agent, what they want me to do is sell the financials. So they just want you to put business on the books so you can start the conversation. That's really what the motivation
I had
is.
no idea.
Yeah,
what a great insight.
Yeah, it's
To sell, what do you mean by sell the financial?
life, whole life, variable,
yeah.
annuities, because that's where the real money is. That's
Right.
gravy. And that money actually keeps paying them after they retire, but the property and casualty doesn't. So that's their carrot, and they just want to get you in the door. We used to always joke the biggest door to the house was the garage. So.
Right. That guy used to, his justification to me, and I might speak about this online, but he's like, look, man, here's the deal. People that are price conscious are going out on the internet and they're doing the progressives and the guys and all that shit. And they come up with a price, and then they call me and they go, well, I can get it cheaper over here. And the only way you can beat that price is to go skinny on every coverage that there is and bump the deductibles and waive the med pay and everything else. And he's like, it's either a choice of writing the coverage or not.
Well, we don't do it.
And I'm like, well, you're still,
my staff, when someone comes in, we'll quote exactly what they have, apples to apples, but we'll also quote at least the minimum, and then we'll present them back and say, hey, apples to apples, I can document I'm actually saving you money. It makes more sense. Now, here is a policy that's 3-4 times the coverage, and you're only paying $80 more, and you're still saving $400. So let's do that. And if they say no, then you say, have a good day.
And I bet a bunch of those guys come back to you at some point too, and just go, you know what?
The takeaway actually makes them rethink it,
right?
Because they're like, if you're that serious about it, then
like,
well, and with this hard market, I mean, yeah. When I came up in the insurance industry, first everybody bought their own insurance, and they did the right thing. And then the cardinal rule was you never talk bad about another company or another agent. And all that's gone out the window because it's State Farm and USAA have these.
Like, he's a nice guy, but I mean, a little hard on that.
Yeah. But they
down in the paint from time to time, you know.
Yeah. But they have templates, I'm pretty sure, of how to maximize the lowest premium, and when they do that, they're gouging.
Yeah.
We've had so many clients leave, and we always ask for their new quotes or their new policy. Probably 30% actually will do it, and we always find an issue and they stay. We actually have had a number of clients after a year or two that just call us back and they're like, "Put me back in the books."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What happened to the other guy?" They're like, "They poked my eyes out."
Yeah.
I had a woman that did it on a condo. She went to, I think, Farmers or something. They did no loss assessment on her condo policy. She ended up paying like $12,500 out of pocket. We literally had it on her policy. She left within like 3 months. She got that, had to pay it, was back at the year mark.
Yeah.
She's like, "I can't believe I did that." And she said, "You guys asked me for the deck pages and I didn't send them to you, and I'm an asshole." I'm like, okay, well, I mean, you can go there on yourself, but we'll take you back.
Right. It's okay. We still love you.
That's actually going to be a really bad part market. That condo and townhomes that's going to blow up.
Yeah,
that is in bad shape.
Yeah, that's the big thing down. You know, these hurricanes and stuff are hell on everybody.
Yeah. But there's a lot of excess and surplus carriers now that are reopening in Florida. It's actually getting a lot better. Florida's actually in a lot better shape on this than Texas or California. California,
Yeah.
shit show.
The problem is still, you know, these HOA boards and stuff that are so price conscious are, you know, in my opinion, apt to cut corners and stuff until something catastrophic happens. And then it's like there's no way to get around the fact that you've got these monster assessments and stuff coming down. And, you know, you've got, and the environment is different in Florida. Like, it's not unusual to have litigation that follows most claims. And it's definitely like hurricane-type claims, cat losses. And there's a provision that the attorney's fees get paid out of the award. It's over and above. Like, attorney's fees are separate. So,
which is good coverage.
I mean, that's just a very pro-consumer law, but the insurance companies get hosed on it. But their perspective is, screw it, we can wait and delay payment for 3 years until this thing comes to pass and maybe settle it out at the end and stuff. And you know, like the Hurricane Katrina and stuff. We saw State Farm literally shut down payment of claims for about a year following Katrina. Like, every single claim we had to go into litigation because they would make us the lowest, crappiest offers that were really just saying, we don't want to settle this case. Because it allowed them to build up some money over the next year and not literally go under in the process. And
there was a division of State Farm last year that actually lost its financial.
Really?
That's a big deal.
That's a huge deal.
I mean, I have clients that we have in California that.
Right. Hey, welcome back to the Troubleshooter Show. This is John Fuller filling in for Tom Martino. I am a personal injury attorney in Denver, Colorado, and have been a longtime contributor and supporter of the referral page and the Troubleshooter page. And I'm here filling in today and tomorrow and Friday, so you're going to get a whole bunch of me. But we are having a great discussion today. We've got Dan Mahoney in the studio. Dan is the owner of Insurance Group of Denver, and he's an insurance agent. He's an independent insurance agent. And so he's allowed us to have a whole bunch of conversations from the perspective of the guy that's advising people on what insurance to buy, and at the same time, me, the guy that's dealing with the after effects of that and how to work through claims and what's really the appropriate amount of coverage and how it all works. And so we've opened up the lines to your calls. So if you've had any issues where you're unsure about your own insurance coverage, you've had a bad claims experience because of the coverage that you had, or you're just not sure how it all works between things like MedPay and liability and umbrellas and all of this stuff that gets very confusing, by all means, give us a call. The number is 303-713-8255, and we are happy to work through every one of those issues with you from both of those perspectives and hopefully help answer you and a lot of other listeners' questions. We're going to go right to the phones here. We're going to check in with Oscar. Oscar was telling us about his insurance on his 2003 Lexus, and we had a little phone problem. Oscar, you still with us?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. You're coming through loud and clear. So how can we help you today?
Okay, good. Well, you had a previous caller that was along the lines which I'm going to ask about, and that is, should I drop the insurance on the Lexus and maintain full coverage on my 17 Mazda?
Is it just the value of the Lexus that has you thinking about doing that?
Yeah, because Alon Edmonds or whoever it was, they checked with it. They're between 9 and I was just wondering if I should just go straight with liability or things of that nature.
Yeah. Dan, I think that does go right down the lines of the last, the other caller about that.
But it's your pain threshold and also about, getting a quote to see if it really makes sense financially. Insurance is a little unique that, just because you do something with one car, you think it might impact half of your policy if you have two cars. That's not really the truth. Insurance is measuring a whole bunch of different components and assigning risk to that. So even if you reduce use on one car, oftentimes the other car that you have on there might actually increase because you're shifting risk or more use to that other vehicle.
Would the caller be better off looking at raising deductibles and stuff, or maybe converting over to, uninsured property coverage or something instead of comp and collision, or what do you recommend there?
Obviously keep all your liability in place.
Right.
And again, it's just your pain threshold, what you can afford to lose. And it may not be worth taking that risk either once you get the quotes back.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, man. Have a good day.
Thanks for the call, Oscar. We appreciate it. We're going to go next to John, who's been holding for a couple minutes. John, you have a question about auto insurance. What is going on, John?
Good show, guys. I tuned in late, so I don't know if you've addressed this issue or not. What if you got and this is not my circumstance, but I was just curious, what if you're got a 19-year-old kid, girl or guy, doesn't matter whether they have a driver's license or a Colorado ID, and they have no car, no insurance whatsoever, and they're renting these scooters going around by Coors Field, this, that, and whatever, and they lose control of their scooter, or they're on their scooter and they broadside a car, do damage to the car, person may be injured, whatever. How's that insurance handled?
That's a great question. Is the 19-year-old still living in your household?
No. The kid, whenever he needs anything, he gets rides from friends, that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's where that non-owned auto policy comes in play again.
Right.
Tremendous amount of coverage on that. And something else that people don't think about is, especially a 19-year-old, it's going to be really cheap for him to buy that as opposed to actually having a car in there. And at some point when he goes to buy a car, if he's had that policy in place for a few years, when he's coming into the market, he's coming in as a preferred buyer because he's had insurance in place.
Because there's a track record.
As opposed to coming in as not having insurance or uninsured.
Right.
And he's probably going to pay the difference anyway by that time.
Yes, sir, John.
But guys, what if you got the 19-year-old, and like I said, it's not my situation, but they just don't have insurance. They can't afford it. They don't want to buy it. They don't think they need it because they just ride scooters around, and then friends give them rides to go to the grocery store or whatever.
So is your question from the perspective of the guy's car that gets hit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. How does he get his damages?
Yeah, I'll tell you how. He looks to his...
Or whether it's, does that go under the uninsured motors part or what?
Yes, that's exactly right. That's a great question. So it's just like any other accident where you're hit by somebody that doesn't have insurance. You're going to look to your medical payments coverage. You're going to look to your uninsured motorist coverage, and you're going to try to, you're going to try to piece together some damages there under your own policy, which is a crappy deal. And you're going to probably have to pay a deductible for your property getting fixed to fix your car door where the guy put a big dinger in it and stuff. But I mean, that's why we have insurances for people, whether it's a guy on a scooter or a guy in a car that has no coverage, or somebody that stole a vehicle and there's no coverage. I mean, there's 1,000 circumstances where the guy that causes the damage is not covered. Dimitri.
Okay.
John,
you educated me. I think I heard this right. I have a couple $1 million umbrella policy, but I don't have that under the uninsured motors portion.
Yes, sir. Have you looked into getting that?
What's that?
Have you looked into getting that extra rider?
I think I'm going to call my agent today after I get off the phone with you guys.
And there's a lot of carriers.
I don't think I was ever offered it or even thought about it. I always thought, I have $2 million umbrella policies, my wife and I, and we're covered. We don't have any kids in the household anymore.
You are not alone.
I'm going to pay the additional amount and get it for because what is it, about 37% of people driving around without car insurance?
Yes, that's exactly right. So what you're going to find out there, and Dan was just telling me that this morning, that a lot of the carriers now, they don't want to insure that extra risk for the uninsured motorist coverage. But I can tell you that I would shop around on that basis alone. So if my carrier didn't offer that on an umbrella, I would go find a different carrier that did.
And there's also specialty carriers that will do it.
Specialty carriers. So
just the umbrella.
All they're really concerned about is that you have the requisite amount of coverage down below.
Correct.
In order to qualify to get the umbrella above. So if your carrier doesn't offer that, then I mean, for the amount of money, it's pennies to change that coverage over to additional for you and your family, and I think it's well worth every penny.
Okay. Wow. You guys are very well educated and appreciated.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the call. Yes, Dimitri.
A couple of comments about his call. I have a feeling he was asking more about the property damage caused by the scooter rider. Yeah. And his umbrella is not going to help him, and RMI is not going to help him. So I'm wondering, because the scooter is not likely to do a whole lot of medical kind of damage to the driver of the vehicle, right? Yeah, it's more likely a big dent. So does the scooter company itself have insurance that extends in these cases in the same way, for example, a car rental company is not going to let you take the car off the lot unless you either buy their insurance or have your own. Are the scooter companies bound by any of those requirements?
I mean, that's kind of Wild West stuff.
I don't think many of them are, Dimitri.
Wow.
Most of them have. I mean, if you've ever rented one of those scooters, you would know this, and I have not either. But I did look hard at a case one time where a guy had been injured, and I was shocked at the length of the contract that you have to just scroll through and agree to, which nobody reads before they agree to it. But you scroll through it super fast and get down to the bottom, and I agree. That's absolutely binding. And what you'll find in those is that they disclaim liability for anything. For anything.
But that contract was agreed to by the renter of the scooter. But if I'm walking down the street,
that's right,
and a scooter rider who's got a head full of dope
runs
me over and causes serious injuries.
But there's no state requirement that the scooter company maintain that insurance. So if the driver of it says, I understand that I am liable for these risks and I agree to be responsible, then that may be your only avenue. So back to the caller, your 19-year-old, kid that has no assets, that's living in an apartment, that, has no car, no money, whatever, that may be your only source of recovery. So we're right back to where we started, which is using your own comp and collision or using your own, you say, well, it's not likely to be injuries. Well, maybe.
Well,
But
for
maybe it
pedestrians,
is.
by the
Maybe
way,
they swerved to keep from hitting the scooter guy that
That's
ran
right.
out in front of them, and they hit a pole or a building, and then we do have injuries, but still no insurance.
And if I'm a pedestrian on the sidewalk that gets run over and injured, then
It's a
is there
mess.
any case to be made like this? Hey, that scooter company should not have given this guy a motorized vehicle that he took on the sidewalk and ran me over.
Yeah, there's a case to be made, but is there coverage to be afforded? That's a tricky deal. Let me tell you, man, these scooter companies, you will find that they are so mired in different layers of corporate shield and stuff that you may find that you've got to find and figure out how to serve process on a company in China to actually get service of process. It's in federal court. It gets removed. It's a mess. And so, again, there are circumstances where the only prudent course of action is for you to make sure that you're covered enough so that whatever happens to you and your family, you know that you've got that protection. And one of those ways is through, just like the caller just had, having enough uninsured motorist coverage, with the rider so that you and your family is protected. That's the only way I know is to have enough that protects me, because I don't count on the other guy having anything. So we're going to move along here. We have, John, did that answer your question?
He was right. I was more worried about the property damage.
Okay.
That was more, who's going to fix the person's car?
Yeah.
And who's going to pay for it?
It's going to
And
be.
like you guys said, they don't, can they give a guy that's riding a scooter a DUI test or?
Yeah, they sure can.
They can. If your bike too.
Yeah, and your bike or your horse. I know a buddy
Golf
that got a DUI on the back of a mule one time. But
Which one
yeah,
was the
you're
X?
right. Comp and collision. It's your own insurance. That's going to be your only avenue. You can go sue the guy in small claims court and try to get payments on that. But it just comes back to you protecting you and unfortunately that's just one of those things. So hey, appreciate the call, John. We've got another couple calls lined up we'll get to right after the break. Hang on just a second.
I didn't think people would like insurance.
Do what?
I didn't think people would like insurance. It's pretty fun.
Popular topic. It's a good subject.
All right, to geek out on insurance, you got to realize that. We're talking like insuring spice trade, settling new countries, space exploration, cell phones.
Covering all the important
That was
shit,
all
man.
insured.
We've got scooters and, I don't know. I think that there's such bad information out there. When people call up and, there's so many facets to these claims that you got to know about to even have that conversation. And so a lot of times, even with Tom and them, they focus on just the property damage. And then, you kind of lose sight of all the other issues that are out there. And it's hard to just single issue these questions. You got to look at the big picture and kind of know how it all dovetails in together. Jeez.
Well, and then you also have issues where, the industry itself hyper commoditizes the industry, and then you also have, personal injury attorney signs all over town telling you how bad an insurance company is. It's this really weird vortex. It's like, they're great for you because they pay, right?
I'm glad we have them,
Yeah.
but listen, I don't begrudge what they are. They're a for-profit corporation, but there are countless stories of them behaving poorly.
Oh yeah,
And,
that's where they need to get.
That's their issue. But I think the most intellectually stimulating cases are ones where we have true coverage disputes, or we're really getting into the interpretation of a contract. Right. Those are just fun to me. You don't argue about red lights and shit very often. It's those cases that are more interesting. But we've had some really cool ones over the years where
We'll have clients call us that are divorced and they have teen drivers, and they want to put the teen on both mom and dad's policies. I'm like, no. Like, you're gonna make a mess, man, because that's double indemnity, and you're going to have insurance companies pointing fingers, and nobody's going to pay anything.
Well, the challenge that, and I'd like to actually, if we run out of callers here, I'd like to pose that question of what to do with kids, because you get some people that truly think, you know, I'm going to buy a separate policy and just put liability on the kid. That's all we're going to have is liability. And I'm like, that's the dumbest goddamn thing you could do, you know. But the situation with like divorced parents and stuff, where we run into issues is, you know, the insurance company wants to know every licensed driver in the household. Okay, does the kid live in the household? What constitutes living in the household? Is it half plus a day? Is it half minus a day? Is it half the week? You know, days that end in Y, whatever. What is it? If they're arguably living in the household for any percentage of time, you probably need to let them know we've got a licensed driver that's here in the household enough times that he's likely to use the vehicles. If not, they're probably not going to cover his ass because they're going to claim we didn't know he was a licensed driver, and you know, and so you breached the contract by not letting us know about this licensed driver. And even if you go, well, he's in his mom's policy, yeah, but not our policy. And so you can't double cover him, but you kind of have to. Yeah, it's tricky, and no, very few agents. You know,
we always tell people if the divorce decree says something, that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Wherever they're really at, it's
but
where you need to be.
Here's the problem: you always end up with like the wife has American Family and Dimitri has Farmers or whoever. You got different companies that can't possibly know what the other guy's policy says, and they're not talking enough to work through the issues and stuff.
Well,
so
they don't want to because it's double and double. I mean,
they really rather not tell them about the licensed driver because their rates go up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I get a lot of people like, hey, I just want to take my kid off the policy. I'm like, well, until they're 24, there's really not much benefit. And if you own the car, don't take them off the policy. And if your kid's a shithead,
the family car doctrine is real.
Put the title in the kid's name and make him independent and make him get his own.
Emancipate his ass.
Yeah. I mean,
13,
it's better than
put him out on the
you
street.
Sued. Yeah.
We'll get back to your 19-point question here, Dimitri. Don't you
Oh,
think
no
we've
rush.
forgotten
We can
about that?
continue tomorrow. It's only if there are no callers.
Don't you think we forgot about that?
Oh, no, I know we didn't. It's only for...
Trajan Wealth, your trusted local fiduciary advisors. TrajanWealth.com. Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
Good afternoon, John Fuller here. We are wrapping up the last half an hour or so here of the Troubleshooter Show. I am a personal injury attorney. Today's show has kind of evolved into an all things about insurance show, which is very cool because we've been able to talk about some things that we just don't ever, run into except when we have these crazy discussions. And we're fortunate enough to have Dan Mahoney in the house today. And Dan is with the Insurance Group of Denver. You can reach Dan at igdenver.com or 720-436-1990. Dan's an independent insurance agent, so he represents a whole litany of companies out there that none of which are on the sign above the door. He's not a branded like a Farmers or an Allstate, rep. So he's going to be able to give you the benefit of knowing a zillion different companies and what they offer and how their coverage might best suit you. And so at least if you're considering a new policy for your family, it might be well worth your while to go sit down with Dan and kind of run through what your options are. We've got a few callers on the line. We're going to go to Steve at this point. Steve's got a question about auto and home insurance. What is going on, Steve?
Yeah, I was just interested. I'm retired. House is paid for, around $1 million. And I was just kind of interested to know what's your take, combined the two of you guys, in terms of what kind of coverage for the car and for the home, and do you recommend the umbrella policy? I talked with my agent the other day, and they said an umbrella policy for me at $1 million would be about $1,000 a year. And that sounds like a lot, if you think of it over, 20 years or so. But I'm curious, what do you recommend for people like myself?
Dan, what do you do with a call like this?
Obviously, there's a lot more information I need to know, but basics are, your home, you should have at least a $500,000 liability. Your auto should be at least $250,500. For umbrellas, John might be able to chime in on this, but I always tell clients that they should probably buy an umbrella that's roughly equivalent to their assets. Basically, I look at it as low-hanging fruit. So if John's ever enlisted by someone that you might hurt, he's looking at assets. John knows that going against Travelers, Hartford, Safeco, whoever it is, for a $3 million umbrella is a lot easier to play in court than going after you individually because you're a person.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
There's a nice deflection there in that. Umbrellas, again, range between probably $200 and $1,200. It's your underlying coverages and any other risk factors that are going to affect that cost.
I was going to ask, Steve, what do you have for your liability limits already? Are you getting a quote
right
that
now,
involves?
I'm at 100 for auto, 100 and 300.
Okay, so it might be the case that the reason the quote sounds pretty high is that they first got to get you up to that 250, 500 level before you're able to qualify for an umbrella. That's
yeah, and actually, if you move your auto to 250, 500, the umbrella actually would probably drop.
Yeah, so
kind of think of your auto policy or your home policy as like the deductible on your umbrella.
Right.
So the higher that deductible is, the less the umbrella is going to cost.
Okay, that makes sense. And then do you try to get the umbrella to match your money that you have in the bank or your total net worth, including your home?
So
where do you try to get that?
So I can kind of speak to that as a guy that represents plaintiffs only. So my clients are people that have been injured and are going after people like you that happen to cause an accident, and we're evaluating what to do about our damages. And so I can tell you from my perspective, number one, I've got to have a client who's got damages that are significant. If we're talking a $15,000, $20,000 claim, we don't even have this conversation. But if we have a client that, say, got $1 million of damages, and I mean really $1 million, they may have $500,000 of medical bills and a couple years of lost wages, and they're going to have a lifetime of care. I mean, these are real damages that they're going to have to survive the rest of their life on. And so it's real money. When they're looking at somebody like you, they're evaluating, or I'm evaluating, does this make sense? Is this guy appropriately insured? Is his insurance policy the most valuable asset that he has? Or did this guy voluntarily choose to buy only enough insurance to satisfy the state limits or something such that his personal assets are more valuable? And I can tell you, you don't get to go after both. It's going to be with very few exceptions, you don't get to go after both. Most of the time, the insurance company is going to mandate that you agree to a release before they'll kick over those policy limits, short of going absolutely to trial and getting a judgment. But if given that choice between taking the insurance policy and giving the release, or not taking that money and going the long way of getting a judgment, dealing with the uncertainties of that and the expense and the time, and then trying to go after and collect it, there's got to be a huge difference between your assets and the amount of insurance for that to be a worthwhile venture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
So, talk to your agent about upping those limits to the required amount that gets you into the ability to shop for multiple umbrella policies, and then give a call to somebody like Dan to say, run it up the flagpole and just see what's out there in available coverage, and do your price shopping then. I think you'll be surprised that it may actually make really good sense for you.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you so much.
Hey, I appreciate the call.
Dan, how can he get a hold of you? What's a good number for this guy to call you?
Our
phone number?
Our entry number, if you will, not a direct number. The base number is 720-436-1990. That's 720-436-1990. Or you can visit our website, IG, like insurance group, and Denver, igdenver.com.
Cool. Patrick, we're going to be right back after this break, and we will take your call first up on the other side. So everybody hang on. Give us a call. We'll be happy to work through your issues as well. Thank you.
Boy, that fourth hour starts wearing you down.
What's that?
Fourth hour gets you a little tired.
Yeah. We're on the home stretch now.
How many days a week are you in here?
I usually work 4 days a week. These past couple of weeks has been 5, but I'm going to go back. I mean, there's still some full-time days I need to put in at my company, so I'll probably go back to 4 very soon, probably starting next week.
What kind of recycling?
Industrial recycling, so factories, distribution centers, giant, retail locations that bale cardboard. I supply international paper mills with fiber, IP. So I sell that material.
I never asked you, do you recycle electronic goods?
Nope.
That's a separate.
Yeah, that's a whole different part of the industry, and it's a really dirty, unethical part of the industry.
Yeah, that's the stuff on Nightline and.
Yeah, when you see the shit floating down the river. So yeah, that's. Just,
what about repurposing stuff? Like,
not me.
Not you.
Hey, is there enough gold in computers and laptops to make salvaging it at the gold prices today meaningful?
Oh, even at the gold prices of 20 years ago, it was meaningful. So these electronic recyclers, they have machines, big chopping machines that cut off the gold stuff.
See this interview with Belichick's girlfriend?
She hot?
Oh my gosh, she's 26.
She's 24.
24.
Is there a picture of her?
Oh,
She hot?
she's hotter than. She's
Georgia Asphalt in August?
Yes.
The White House press secretary, her husband's like 65.
Okay, I need to look her up.
Oh, she's hotter than you know what. But
and she controlled that conversation.
She did an interview the other day, or Belichick did an interview where they were talking about his book. And Belichick's not one that's ever really shied away from words over the years and stuff. She was like at the computer screen off to the side going, don't answer that. We're not going to do that. We're not going to talk about, how did you guys meet? We're not talking about that.
Yeah.
Hello. We have a question on YouTube about long care
Term
insurance. So if you could touch on that when we get an opportunity, when there's not.
Is it good?
Just general.
Do we like it?
Just if you cover it.
Would you recommend it?
I no longer am certified in it. The product over time, there's less and less carriers in the field. And it's also one of the only coverages that actually the state allows them to re-index the premium all the time, primarily because medical costs are so high.
Can you talk about it if I ask the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got you.
We've got one call home.
I know.
It
I'm
has
all over.
been all about insurance.
I know. Got a
Well,
problem
and
with that?
cockroaches.
I can't.
Which one could argue is.
Don't forget about it.
Forget about it.
I can't say the C word in front of John, but my malpractice, when I retired, I found out I had a $150,000 long-term care policy that they had initiated when I first started with them, and I never even knew about it.
That's good. That's really good.
Man, that's fantastic.
What?
That's a great accident.
That's fantastic. They must really care about you.
Of course, that only gives you about 4 months of care.
I'm in here one day just railing on Copic about how much they suck and stuff and and everything else, and we get done and Doc gets up and grabs his Copic bag and stuff out the door.
Now, Copic is kind of like a pseudo-government insurance company. They're not.
No, it's just
Colorado
it's the
Physicians Insurance Company.
It has about 90% of the doctors in Colorado covered.
They're kind of like, your people. They're a little heavy-handed in their.
The garbage industry?
It's like, imagine that, Russian in the garbage business,
I've never heard of it.
Very good for doctors.
He knows how to get rid of a guy.
They're a very heavy-handed insurance company that, is, you'd go to visit a treating doctor and there'd be a Copic attorney sitting there to listen to the conversation and stuff and that kind of stuff. Where you're just
Holy
like,
shit.
really? Yeah, really.
That's really expensive for them, isn't it?
Not from their perspective. It's just total intimidation. So.
Wow.
No,
You cannot find a local doctor to testify as a standard of care doctor in Colorado against another Colorado doc. If they're insured by COPIC, that will not happen.
No shit.
And so that's why we have to go out of state for all of our standard of care experts, because you can't get a local guy to do it because his insurance won't let him.
Can't go to the Christmas
Wait,
party.
his insurance won't let him?
Won't let him.
They can do that? They can dictate the path of his own business?
Yeah. Doc, we understand that you've been retained by a plaintiff.
Yeah, I can't go number 2 anymore.
On a job. We've seen your name show up on a pleading. You weren't going to testify against this other doctor, were you?
I did 2 of those. I never got a call from COPIC about it.
But what could they do? So if the answer to that question is, yeah, I've been retained as an expert witness.
They could just not renew you next year.
Holy shit. Okay.
Well, and this is your med now.
This is your near.
You could lose your own malpractice insurance.
You might have to look out of state, Dimitri, next year for your coverage. I don't know what other options you'd have, but just a thought. Yeah. Not saying we would do that, of course, but
00.
All right. Good afternoon. We are back live at the Troubleshooter Network. I'm John Fuller. As you all know, I'm a personal injury attorney here in town, and we are talking today about insurance and mostly auto insurance and stuff. We did have a question from the YouTube listeners about, your short-term care or your long-term care policies that you hear some companies offer out there. Dan, what experience do you have with those policies? What are things that the listeners need to look out for as they're considering that kind of coverage?
Yeah, great question. Just to disclose also is that in the state of Colorado, you have to have a special designation to sell long-term care. I surrendered my designation just because the market is narrowing quite rapidly. A lot of companies are no longer playing in that space.
Okay.
Short-term care is usually something you're going to get from your employer. It's going to do that, just short-term care. Long-term care is looking at assisting as you get older. If you have medical issues and you need a lot of treatment around the clock, that's usually where that's going to kick in. The cost of the policies, they're not cheap, but they are very good. It's a great way to protect an estate and assets. Again, not a lot of companies do it anymore, and you need to go through someone who still has that designation. As an option, there are some term life policies that have what they call accelerated benefits. And some of those companies will allow you to use the proceeds of that policy pre-decease to pay for things like critical care, other more expensive end-of-life treatment options. But they're usually only giving you 70 cents on the dollar, the benefit of the policy.
Right.
But it's a nice workaround. It's easier to underwrite, maybe less expensive to buy.
Okay. Caller, if you have any more specific questions, give us a shout. We'll try to work through that. Patrick, you've been holding for a while with a question about auto insurance. What is going on, Patrick?
Yeah, hi. So I have a 2015 Ford Mustang, and my insurer is Progressive. I bought it. It was nice, looked new. Everything was good on the body. And then about a year later, so I bought it in June of 23, and then about August of 24, the back quarter panel started peeling off, and it looks like someone bondoed a previous repair from a previous accident on it. And I tried to put in a claim, and they said it is not covered.
Yeah, and they're saying that because the damage didn't occur while you owned the vehicle or pre-existed the ownership of the vehicle. Is that what they're telling you?
Pretty much. I'm just making sure that's accurate.
And that's not playing dirty. I mean, that's the insurance company saying, we're going to insure against any risk from this date going forward. We're not going to insure against anything that's not yet discovered. So that I have to say I'd side with the insurance company on that one. Your recourse in that situation is always going to be looking back towards the person that you bought the vehicle from or the dealership and whether or not there was full disclosure of the damage. I mean, those kind of areas I think would be more fruitful for you than to look at the insurance company. They're just going to say, we insured the vehicle. There's not a covered event that has happened here that would invoke our coverage that would allow you to fix the body repair or whatever would happen. So
as an alternate, something you might want to consider is if you pull a Carfax and you find the shop that actually did the work, you might be able to go back to them and see if there's a warranty that will apply. Oftentimes, insurance companies, the contract or the shops that they use will guarantee the work, but it's only the life that you own the vehicle.
Right.
So there might be a limitation to it, but if it's a good shop, reputable shop, they did something wrong, they might get you in and do something for you.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, that's correct, because Caliper Collision is the one who did it, and they did it in New Mexico. But yeah, as I read their warranty, it's only for the person who owned the car at that time.
Correct.
How extensive is the damage, Patrick?
I got a quote for it. They want $4,600 repair because it needs a whole new quarter panel.
Holy moly. I wouldn't think a quarter panel would cost that much.
Do you know how long ago Collision did the repair?
Yeah, they did it, I think late or early 2023, I believe, maybe late 2022.
I think I'd go argue with them because body work should last longer than that.
Absolutely, it should. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Warranty or not.
They literally just bondoed it and painted it and called it good.
You know, Caliper's a big operation. I mean, they're not insignificant. They've got a presence, I think, in probably just about every state out there, and many of them in Colorado. I mean, I kind of think that I agree that you should be able to have a hard conversation with them about, you know, at least compromising the cost of the repair, because certainly, you know, whoever paid them for the first repair didn't really get the benefit of the bargain out of it. It was that warranty that you were buying and expecting to get coverage on. So I don't know. That's going to be a tough one, Patrick, but I don't think Progressive is going to be on the hook for it. And if you subsequently have an accident and it damages that quarter panel, the risk you run is that they're going to say, well, that was previously damaged and we're only going to pay for our apportionment of the percentage that it was damaged more. And then you're going to be, you know, you're going to be kind of double victimized there, if you will, for lack of a better word.
Okay. If I got it properly repaired, like a whole new quarter panel and all that, would they then maybe cover it?
Yeah, absolutely they would. Because once it's back to being all repaired, it's in the exact state that they insured it in the first place. And as soon as you actually had a covered event, that insurance policy would kick in and then they would have to do what they have to do. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet. So, we still have half of Dimitri's question over here, and we were just getting into the uninsured motorist side of the game. In the limited time that we have left, and we're going to have to go to a break here again in a second, but Dan, I would like you to talk about, you know, uninsured motorist coverage and talk a little bit about those uninsured, you know, riders that you can kick onto umbrella policies. Right. And how that actually works and why it might be advantageous to try to get that on your policy, and whether or not, what was the word that Dimitri used, whether his coverage was eliminated or
amplified.
Amplified, that was the right word, sorry. Whether his coverage was amplified by the presence or lack thereof of the subpart of the secondary paragraph of uninsured motorist coverage.
From the main overriding perspective that I learned from John over the months is, I want to insure myself.
Right.
I want to buy insurance for me.
Right. And that's what you should do. Exactly. All right. We're going to address that question right as soon as we come back.
Yeah, I think I'd go argue with Caliper on that one.
Be like, come on, man. What the hell?
It should last longer than 2 years.
Is it caliber?
Caliper. Like a brake caliper.
Like a brake caliper?
Yeah.
No, caliber, like
like a gun.
It's caliber collision.
Okay. So it is caliber.
Yeah, it was a green.
Caliper would be a stupid name.
They do a lot of insurance
His friend of
contract
mine
work.
has,
They would have had to pay for it if the guy's still in the car. So.
Yeah.
His friend of mine's girlfriend sold 43 body shops to them in Texas a couple years ago.
For how much?
A lot.
Wow, like private jet kind of a lot?
Yeah.
Whoa!
Like they're not working anymore. I would say that.
Pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, thanks, Doc.
See you tomorrow. All right, man. Appreciate it.
Great afternoon.
She's kind of low on the redneck side. She refers to him as Calibre, which just baffles me.
Calibre.
There's no way in hell that their name is Calibre.
That's
Thank you
the
very
Spanish
much.
pronunciation.
So
she can call him whatever she wants.
So there's his girlfriend right there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's totally just pure natural love.
I mean, as her father,
Love can break out anywhere. Okay.
He must have a great personality.
he's got to be older than her own father.
But don't get carried away now. You
No,
know.
I don't know. That's
impressive.
he's got to be 70.
Yeah, totally in shape.
Jordan right over there was piping in, and they edited her out for like 25 different questions, but they didn't edit her out for this one about how they met. And she's just like a little bitch over there. She's like, we're not talking about
She
that.
just shut it.
What? What?
Well, then
Yeah.
look at these photos. Belichick doing photos like that. Can you imagine that?
And Belichick's looking like Joe Biden up there when they're like, so, we've seen these photographs on Instagram and stuff of like you in a fishing outfit and her in a mermaid outfit. How did that come to pass? And he's like, looking like Biden at your microphone, And she's like, we're not answering that, and it's just like, come on.
Even his after game conferences,
Right?
you just look at a reporter like, you're stupid. I'm not even going to answer that.
What is
Exactly.
he famous for? He's in football, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does he do?
He's a coach.
Head coach of the Bills.
Oh,
No, not
okay.
Bills,
Is he still the head coach of the
He just moved down to a college team.
South
didn't he?
Carolina?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's a famous, very accomplished coach. And one that's like,
I think he's won the most Super Bowls.
yeah,
Wow.
he's one that when in these press conferences, like Dan's saying, that would be up there, and they're like, on third down situations, you're blah, 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 ran with, decided it, and he's like, that's a stupid question, move on.
But I love that, though. I mean,
You just
how
love the
often
guy.
do you wish you could do that? I mean, when somebody asks you something, you're like,
That's dumb. Next question. And it's like, hallelujah, somebody to call it out. And then to have this little bimbo, like, derail him, and he's sitting there like, is she going to pipe in, or do I answer this? Or, it was that
I'm
kind of deal
embarrassed.
where you're like, oh, my God.
That's just tragic.
So there he is holding her up for a little photo shoot.
So embarrassing.
Everybody's like, go, Bill. God love him.
73.
John, remember my class action suit in federal court? Defense filed a motion to dismiss, 17 pages.
The motion?
Yeah, they cited dozens of cases.
What was your response? One paragraph?
Oh no, I have a law firm representing me on this
Oh,
one,
okay.
for free. And so our response isn't due until next week.
Right.
But they said,
That's standard
yeah,
procedure.
Class action.
for spammers, telephone spam, text messages. And so he said, hey, there's nothing troubling in this. It's all boilerplate bullshit.
Standard.
17 pages for bullshit? I mean, if I were the judge, I had to read this and look up
I
the
can
dozens of
barely
cases.
tell you what time of day it is in 17 pages of a brief,
In federal, do you know how much that must have cost?
Yeah.
My guess is 15 grand.
Okay.
What is your guess?
Well, they had a junior associate write it.
But they charged
and then they had the junior partner review it,
Oh, shit.
make comments. And then they had the senior partner review the junior partner's,
Oh, my God.
notes. And then they sent it back to the junior associate to do the edits.
Yeah.
By the time they were done, they probably had 30 hours in that.
That's 15 grand.
Yeah.
By the way, so the judge, I follow the case on Pacer. A couple of days ago, the judge wrote an order reminding the defense law firm of
Page limit or...
no font and font size.
Oh, yeah, see, federal judges are serious about this shit. They have their local practice standards, and that's what applies to this case.
And they
period.
didn't look this up.
Dumb.
Dumb.
That's not
embarrassing.
It's just dumb.
She said future.
You'll find pleadings will get stricken if they
That's
don't
what she
comply.
said.
Yeah.
She said in the future, non-compliant pleadings may be summarily stricken by the court.
Done. They will too.
Can you resubmit it? Or if it's struck, it's
Depends on the
struck forever?
timing. If you've got more time left.
Oh, right. But if
maybe.
you file it the last second?
If you don't, like
Wow.
if it's an important deadline and they file it with the wrong crap.
On Friday night, as part of the night shift tour, after a stop on Jimmy Fallon, he visits with me with your chance to win tickets. Dial it in at 2 right here on 630 KHOW.
All right. Welcome back to the Tom Martino Show, the Troubleshooter Network. This is John Fuller. We are wrapping up our day here. We've got just a few minutes, and we wanted to end on a high note with Dan discussing, umbrellas, and then particularly the ability to add a UM rider to an umbrella and why a party may want to do that. So from your perspective as an agent, give me your best shot
All right.
here.
So an umbrella, just think of it as an umbrella. It sits over your underlying policies. Underlying policies usually require a certain amount of coverage already being written in them. The umbrella is going to act essentially as a multiplier of whatever that underlying number is. So
But
if
it's just on liability, right?
just on liability, nothing else. And that includes the uninsured motorist. Some companies will do an endorsement for uninsured motorists on an umbrella.
Meaning what?
Meaning that there's not a lot out there.
No, meaning that an endorsement means that they actually extend the UM to the limits of the umbrella.
Right. So now in this situation, if you have the UM of 250-500, you have injuries exceeding over $1 million. You can't mow your own lawn anymore. You need help going to the bathroom, all that. You need a lot more money. You can go back now into your own umbrella, trigger that endorsement, and then you can go after your own umbrella for those funds that you need
Is that in addition to the auto policy, or does that become the new limit? Okay.
In this case, it's going to become a new limit. The umbrella will multiply the rest, but the personal injury doesn't usually.
So I wouldn't collect $1.5 million with $1 million umbrella policy. I would just collect the $1 million.
No, you would collect from different sources. So your underlying policy would pay $500. Your umbrella, if you have the endorsement, would pay another $1 million. Okay. So you still would get 1.5.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a cool thing. It actually, listen, umbrellas are only for liability. That's all they do is extend the liability. They don't protect you or your family for anything until you get into a claim that would trigger your uninsured motorist coverage, okay? And if you have a traditional umbrella, what you'll find is that you have in your case, $500,000 of uninsured motorist, but you turn to your umbrella that you think is wonderful and you find out that it has no additional coverage for the underlying uninsured motorist portion of your policy.
Unless I specifically bought the correct kind of umbrella. And what percentage of umbrella, I didn't know about this until yesterday, so what percentage of umbrellas out there are actually do what I wanted to do?
Almost none. I can only think of 2 or 3 carriers that will even offer it. Oftentimes people don't want to buy it. I actually just did one, I think, this week. I think it added $260 to the policy. To add the uninsured.
Are you saying almost none of it added automatically, or none of them offer it, period?
A lot of carriers just won't even offer it.
But you do still have those that do.
Yes.
Specialty lines and stuff.
And then we can also go to specialty lines if a carrier doesn't have it.
Is that a type of coverage that you recommend for your customers?
Yes. In insurance, when you start talking about endorsements, you're starting to talk about percentages on percentages, risk upon risk. At a certain point, you can be overinsured. So, if you're just worried about protecting assets, you've got enough assets, you can take care of yourself if something horrible did happen. Maybe it's not a big deal to you, but for $268 and you have all those assets, you can afford it, so why not?
Well, I look at it from a little different perspective because I'm representing people that all of a sudden, through no fault of their own, are handed this bill of goods, okay?
Right.
And that bill of goods may include a lifetime of medical care. It may, which maybe they have great health insurance for, but that's really difficult to to parlay out into a lifetime of care.
Right.
Typically, people end up on public assistance at some point in that process. Medicare, Medicaid through disability and that kind of stuff. But it's the income thing. If you're talking a high earning, somebody that's making, and I don't mean like super high, but if somebody's making, $100,000, maybe $200,000, and they're 40 years old with a couple little kids in the house, and all of a sudden they're unable to work for the balance of their life, you're talking a gargantuan amount of money. So I don't care how much money you've accumulated at that stage in your life, it's probably not going to be enough.
And that's also a good reason why to buy it, as John is saying.
Well, yeah, no, that's why I'm saying it's mandatory. I believe so strongly in it. If my carrier told me that they didn't offer a UM rider on top of the umbrella that I have, I wouldn't buy it from them. I would go to a different carrier, and I would go to another one and another one and another one until I found that rider. That's just me.
Right.
But I see the effects of this every day in my practice, where we have so many cases where we have bad damages and not enough coverage. Right. And so sometimes you hear Mark talking about all the time, John got limits, and John did this. It's like, great. Sometimes limits is still a slap in the face and an insult because you're not even close to made whole.
And a limit is a limit, and that's why it's called that.
A limit is a limit. So listen, we're out of town today, or out of time today. Come back tomorrow. We'll be doing this all over again. My name is John Fuller. Save all your troubles for us. Thanks for listening.
Follow Tom Martino at Real Tom Martino and stay connected with all of us at 630 KHOW, KHOW.com, and on the iHeartRadio app. This is Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
Is credit card debt ruining your life? Did you know you have a right to settle that debt for much less than you owe? DebtBlue has helped people just like you resolve millions of dollars of high-interest credit card debt. They can help with payment relief, the burden of rising inflation, and have a large portion of your debt wiped clean. If you have $10,000 or more in credit card debt, a free 10-minute phone call could save you thousands. Discover how to reduce or completely resolve your credit card debt. In fact, we're so sure that we can reduce your debt that we offer the DebtBlue Success Guarantee. We don't get paid unless your debt gets reduced or resolved, so there's absolutely no risk to call. For your free debt resolution plan, call 800-375-1158. That's 800-375-1158. The call is free. The consultation is free. The more you owe, the more you can save. Call now. 800-375-1158. 800-375-1158.
Since we all have more in common than not.
Absolutely. There is one common denominator. It's the common sense way to go.
There's still a place that brings us together.
I agree with everything you're saying. I often disagree.
But you need to look at both sides of the spectrum.
I completely agree.
We're not talking about compromise. We're talking about common ground here.
To talk about everything that's going on.
The few people that have some common sense. Exactly. That's how I like them.
Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
KRFX HD2 Denver.
KHOW Denver, an iHeartRadio station. Make us the #1 preset on the free iHeartRadio app. Listen for all your music, radio, and podcasts. Free never sounded so good.
ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. The nation's gross domestic product reversing course in the first quarter, shrinking by 0.3%. The first negative growth period since 2022 during the pandemic. The report shows businesses shifted to importing as many goods as possible ahead of tariffs. During a cabinet meeting, President Trump blamed the drop on President Biden's administration and says China's economy will suffer more, but he also says Americans may have to cut back.
Somebody said, the shelves are going to be open. Well, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, and maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. But
Supreme Court justices hearing arguments today in an Oklahoma case on whether a Catholic charter school can operate using public funds or if it violates separation of church and state. General Motors issuing a recall for some 600,000 of its full-size trucks and SUVs over fears their engines could fail without warning. This is ABC News. Former NFL quarterback John Elway was reportedly involved in a now fatal golf cart incident at an exclusive club in Southern California.
The Riverside County coroner is confirming John Elway's longtime agent and business partner Jeff Spurbeck died on Wednesday morning from his injuries sustained on Saturday evening. Witnesses say Elway was driving the golf cart at the exclusive Madison Club in La Quinta when Spurbeck fell out and hit his head. Allie Simon saw Elway calling 911.
As we were leaving, we heard the ambulance coming in. So it must have been probably 5 minutes.
It wasn't reported to the Riverside County Sheriff's Office until Monday. It's now under investigation. Alex Stone, ABC News.
The latest round of storms being blamed for at least 4 deaths in Pennsylvania. That string of volatile storms stretched from New York to Texas. More than 700 domestic flights have been canceled in the U.S. today. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Word from California. John Elway's longtime business partner has died after an incident involving a golf cart.
ABC News and TMZ report this happened at an exclusive club in La Quinta, California, Saturday night. Witnesses say Jeff Spurbeck, who had worked with Elway since 1990, fell off the golf cart and that Elway was driving. Allie Simon told ABC she saw Elway call 911 at the time. The Riverside County Sheriff's Office says this wasn't reported to them until Monday. Now the death is under investigation. Spurbeck was 62.
That's reporter Rob Dawson. Elway and Spurbeck were partners in the Seven Cellars wine brand. Scammers stole hundreds of millions from Coloradans last year.
That's according to the latest report from the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, which shows